Hey guys, tonight we slip off our sandals and sink into the steamy hush of an ancient Persian bathhouse, where walls sweat stories and steam carries the secrets of empires. The air is warm and heavy like silk steeped in rosewater. Light filters down from small star-shaped holes in the domed ceiling, dappling the marble floor in watery constellations. You move slowly, each footstep a soft echo on polished stone. Everything is intimate here. Whispers drift farther than shouts. The tiles are slick, the air thick with moisture and murmurs, and someone nearby is humming an old melody in a language you almost recognize. You're wrapped in nothing but a cotton pestimol. Your belongings locked away, your identity reduced to breath, skin, and warmth. A servant passes you, a boy no older than 12, balancing a copper tray stacked with dates, dried limes, and 2 small cups of saffron sherbet. He nods, and you're not sure if he's greeting you or someone he mistakes you for. In this place, faces blur in the fog, and sometimes that's on purpose. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step deeper into the warm air, guided not by sight, but by scent and sound. The bathhouse isn't just one room, it's a procession. First, the sarbonnet, the cool entrance hall with a fountain in the center, meant to transition you gently from the chaos outside to the ritual inside. The sound of water splashing into the pool is rhythmic, almost like it's breathing. Here, men and women part ways depending on the day, depending on the seasons, depending on who you are and who you know. You're ushered forward by a quiet attendant who bows just enough to show respect, but not so much that it feels theatrical. He's done this 100 times before, maybe 1,000. You're not special, but you're not unwelcome either. As you move into the next chamber, the garmkhane, the heat hits you like velvet fire. It's not aggressive. It doesn't bite, it embraces. Moist, dense, enveloping. Your pores bloom open without permission. Your lungs adjust. You start to sweat, but it feels like the bathhouse is exhaling through you. In the corner, 2 elderly men are speaking in low tones, their skin glistening under the lamplight. One gestures with the flannel mitt, the other nods as if confirming details of a plot. You catch fragments. The scribe's daughter, and not since the Zan dynasty. It's unclear whether they're recalling politics or poetry. In a place like this, the line doesn't matter. Mainstream historians agree Persian bathhouses, or hammams, were far more than hygiene centers. They were social engines, diplomacy lounges, gossip hubs, and emotional sanctuaries. A proper hammam experience was half spiritual, half political, like if your therapist, priest, and neighbor's nosy aunt all shared a hot tub. But here's the cheeky part. Some scholars suggest the hammam was also an unofficial intelligence network. Not state-sponsored, mind you. Just an organic, steamy web of overlapping voices. Want to know who bribed the judge who seduced the silversmith's wife, who planned to flee to India? Just sit quietly for an hour with your ears open. A young man, lean and alert, steps past you. His pestimol is tied higher than usual modesty or modesty theater, you can't tell. A long scar curls from his shoulder to his elbow, and you wonder if it came from battle or from one of those poetic accidents people make up in love stories. He notices your gaze and smiles, the kind of smile that holds its breath. You move again slowly toward the caldarium, the hottest chamber. It feels like entering the belly of a warm, breathing beast. The ceiling domes above you in intricate patterns, zigzags, floral curves, stars within stars. It's all geometry and metaphor, a symbolic map of heaven designed for those too soaked to argue theology. A side note for your sleepy brain. One quirky tradition said the shape of these domes helped trap whispers and send them spiraling up like incense to the divine. Imagine prayers and curses mingling overhead in the steam, condensing into sacred mist. As your body adjusts to the heat, you start to float, not literally, though the stone bench beneath you might as well be a cloud. Your thoughts wander. Who bathed here before you? Who slipped, laughed, kissed, confessed? Who watched the same droplets gather on the tile grout? Historians still argue whether these early bathhouses drew more from Roman Turkish or Zoroastrian roots. The truth probably lies in the overlap. Cultures soaked into one another like steam into linen. And what we call Persian was often borrowed, adapted, and perfected. But for now, you don't care about the scholars. Your breath is slow. Your muscles hum. A single droplet falls from the ceiling, landing on your knee with surprising clarity. And just like that, you've disappeared not from the world, but from its weight. The heat hums through your spine as you lean against the smooth, ancient stone. Moisture clings to your eyelashes, and every breath feels like sipping from a warm cup. The ceiling arches high above, patterned like the underside of a lotus blossom. Its geometry precise yet softened by centuries of rising vapor. You glance around. No one speaks loudly. Conversations here are offered like pomegranate seeds, quiet, delicate, and never quite the whole fruit. It's the design of the place every whisper carries, every splash echoes. You could blink and believe you're in a temple. In a way, you are. What makes this place hum isn't just water, it's the architecture. The hammam is a masterpiece of thermal choreography. Beneath your feet, an entire world churns underground furnaces called garmkhane keep the bathhouse warm through a labyrinth of clay pipes and hollow brick channels. A system so refined that heat and humidity could be balanced from one chamber to the next with startling precision. Engineers today still admire it. Some even say half-jokingly that ancient Persia had better climate control than most modern gyms. But those vaulted domes, they do more than impress. They're heat traps and acoustic chambers. The tiny glass stars embedded in the ceilings don't just let in light, they filter it, shaping mood and movement. Everything is curated. You don't walk here, you glide. You catch the scent of burning fig bark, a subtle earthy aroma laced with something sweet. Near the central furnace, a man tends a brazier, feeding it carefully as if it might bite. He hums under his breath, and there's a rhythm to the way he feeds the flames. He might have been doing this since he was 12. He might do this until he's too old to lift the tongs. His position is humble, but he knows every secret of this place. Every pipe. Every crack. Every corner where people think they're alone when they're not. And as he moves, something glints, an amulet tucked into the folds of his tunic. Just a glimpse. A flash of turquoise and brass. You wonder if it's for protection. Or a warning. You pass under a low arch into another chamber. This one is quieter. The sound changes. It's softer. Cushioned. You can hear your own heartbeat now. A row of marble basins lines the wall, each with a little spout shaped like a lion's head, eternally drooling warm water into the bowl below. You kneel at one and scoop a handful to your face. It smells of minerals, honest and ancient. The kind of scent that makes you believe this water has memory. A boy sits nearby, no older than 13, pouring water for an older man. Father and son, student and master. The boy wears a copper bracelet on each wrist, thick, ceremonial looking. You want to ask, but no one does that here. In the bathhouse, the less you ask, the more you're trusted. Mainstream records tell us that Persian bathhouses were always more than functional. They were sacred spaces. Entry often required ritual purification. Shoes off, hair covered, no weapons, no shouting, no business deals sealed with spit. Everything was ordered and fluid. Some clerics even debated whether bathing here counted as a religious act. Others, perhaps the ones who actually came, just closed their eyes and exhaled. And yet there are fringe accounts too. Stories about bathhouses where walls weren't just thick with steam but with whispers. The kind that traveled into palaces. Some hammams reportedly had small openings, just enough for a servant to eavesdrop on visiting nobles. One even had a hidden staircase that led directly to the visitors' quarters. Coincidence? Probably. But Persian architects didn't really believe in accidents. Historians still argue whether these chambers were designed for surveillance or simply echoed with so much conversation that secrecy became impossible. Whatever the truth, you now realize nothing said here is truly private. A woman's voice filters in from a far room, laughter low and knowing. Probably the women's quarters. Sometimes the sound carries through vents bouncing off wet stone and tickling your ears as if someone's whispering directly behind you. The separation of genders is strictly kept on paper anyway. But stories, they drift. You dip your towel into a basin, letting it soak and weigh itself down. A man to your left scrubs his arms methodically with a looped strand of rough silk, a homemade mitt. Every movement practiced, every callus earned. He looks up once and says, "Not to you specifically." The tiles crack louder in winter. You can hear the old ones complaining. Then he goes back to scrubbing. He's not wrong. One of the walls bears a thin fissure running between two floral mosaics. A vine of turquoise and white that on closer inspection seems to ripple where the crack split it. The damage is delicate, almost elegant. Like the building itself sighed too deeply once and left a wrinkle in its own skin. Quirky tidbit. Some bathhouses intentionally preserved cracks in their tiles. The belief was that perfect symmetry tempted the evil eye. A little flaw meant the gods or jealous spirits would pass over your head without pausing to curse you. Some tile artists even sign their names beside deliberate imperfections. If you know where to look, you can still find them. You press your palm flat against one of the stones. It's warm alive almost. The past isn't buried here, it floats, clings, condenses like sweat, and somewhere behind you water splashes. Not loud, just enough to remind you you're not alone. You trudge deeper into the bathhouse, each step softer now as though the stone itself is yielding to your presence. Your towel is damp and fragrant, your skin beginning to feel like warm clay, pliable, vulnerable, and content. As the heat unfurls your muscles like parchment, you reach a small alcove curtained with embroidered linen. A gentle tug, and you step through. This is where the rituals begin. Before the water even touches your bare skin, there are customs to obey. The bath is not just about cleansing the body, it's about preparing the self. And preparation takes time. A lot of time. You sit on a small stone platform towel draped across your thighs as a silver bowl of rose water is offered to you by a woman wearing a neutral expression and a henned hand. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. You cup your hands, take a sip, not to drink, but to inhale. The scent climbs inside you. Rose, saffron, myrtle, and something deeper, maybe cardamom or crushed clove. A recipe older than any cookbook passed from apprentice to apprentice in whispers and gestures. She disappears again, like a dream. Across from you, another visitor sits with his eyes closed. His hair has covered his shoulders, drawn inward in what looks like prayer but might just be shyness. You recognize that posture. It's the universal language of "I'm not ready yet." And in the hammam, readiness matters. There's no rush. Time dilates in steam. One of the more fascinating facts about Persian bathhouses is how intricately they wove together faith culture and bodywork. There were rules about when to bathe, especially during holy periods, and rules about who could bathe with whom. For example, menstruating women were sometimes banned from the hammam, not out of judgment, but due to religious purity codes. But here's the twist: many women came anyway, saying that the steam helped relieve their cramps and calm their mood. A quiet rebellion in warm fog. You shift slightly as a thin copper scraper is offered to you. Next curved like a half-moon smooth from decades of use. You take it and run it gently along your forearm. Dead skin lifts away like memory. It's oddly satisfying, slightly gross, deeply human. A joke floats in your mind. You're literally shedding history. In the corner, a blind storyteller hums a lullaby from his youth. He's not paid to be here. He simply comes. Every third evening, same bench, same tune. They say he once served a shah as a poet before court intrigue ruined his eyes. Whether that's true or hammam gossip is anyone's guess, but his voice, raspy and rich, adds a texture to the air even thicker than steam. Historians still argue whether bathhouses like this were spiritual retreats or simply fancy spas with better lighting. But to the people who used them, the distinction didn't matter. What mattered was how you felt when you walked out, and how long that feeling stayed. You reach for the wooden bucket near your feet. It's carved from cedar, inlaid with a brass handle that glows faintly in the dim light. The bucket is filled with lukewarm water that smells faintly of lime blossoms. You scoop a ladleful and pour it over your shoulders. It flows down your spine in ribbons, pooling at your waist, rinsing away nothing and everything. There's a small square mirror across the room. It's old, clouded, chipped at the corners, but somehow still whole. You look at yourself, or try to. The fog distorts your features, you look unfamiliar, and oddly that comforts you. Here's something most tourists never learn: before you bathed, you were supposed to recite a small prayer. Not aloud, not for show, just a whisper to the universe. Something about gratitude for the water, for the warmth, for making it through another week. People forget that these bathhouses were spiritual long before they were social. The body was never just flesh, it was a vessel for story lineage and divine architecture. In one story from the 9th century, a woman claimed to have met an angel in the hammam. Not glowing, not winged, just a kind-faced stranger who offered her jasmine oil and disappeared. She was never seen again, the woman or the angel. But the tale lingers in the tiles. You wrap your towel a bit tighter, sensing the weight of these walls, not just their mass, but their memory. There are places that watch, not with malice, just attention. Hammams are like that. A small child dashes past the curtain, pursued by a laughing grandmother. The child is slippery and shrieking with joy. The old woman mutters something about blessed mischief before vanishing again. You smile. Even here, with all its dignity and ritual, life leaks in. And now, the final pre-wash step, the oiling. A man appears carrying a ceramic bowl filled with warm sesame oil. He gestures for your hands. You extend them. He pours the oil slowly over your palms, then nods for you to rub it into your arms, shoulders, chest. The oil smells faintly of roasted almonds. It makes your skin shine, it makes your tension melt. He leaves you with one last word, soft and amused. Now you're ready to be seen. You're not sure what he means, but you don't mind not knowing. You rise from the stone platform skin, now glowing with the subtle sheen of sesame oil, and step into the next chamber, a place where scent thickens the air even more fragrant than before. If steam could whisper in poetry, this room would be reciting couplets. Jasmine. Myrrh. Smoke from burning date pits. You could swear the air tastes a little like syruped figs. You've entered the scenting room. Here the rituals shift from the physical to the theatrical. A woman walks past her pestimol cinched high with a braided belt, a cluster of orange blossoms pinned above one ear. Her gaze lingers on the smoke curling from a brass brazier before drifting back to her reflection in a polished tray. You suspect she's admiring more than just her appearance, maybe reliving a memory, maybe plotting one. Fragrance in Persian tradition was never just cosmetic, it was strategic. A perfume could announce status, provoke desire, or even disguise fear. Ancient physicians believed that certain smells protected against disease. Lovers swore by the allure of ambergris, musk, and rose. Soldiers dabbed spiced oil behind their ears before battle, half ritual, half armor. And in the bathhouse, a good scent wasn't just a courtesy. It was currency. Mainstream sources tell us that the perfumers of Persia were unrivaled in the ancient world. They distilled rosewater and clay stills, blended rare ingredients from across the empire, and guarded their recipes like treasure. Some scents were so expensive that only the royal court could afford them. But even a laborer might afford a vial once a year for a wedding, for Nowruz, or for luck, before speaking to someone beautiful. And here now the scenting ritual begins. A young attendant holds a small silver container no bigger than a walnut from which curls a ribbon of smoke. It's oud precious dark woodsy. He wafts it gently towards you, using a folded fan made of palm leaf and silk thread. You inhale. The smell hits somewhere between your throat and your chest, like memory stirred with honey. Then a second scent. Rose. Stronger this time, mixed with saffron and crushed pistachio shell. This isn't a perfume, it's a persona. You suddenly understand why these rituals took hours. They weren't just about washing, they were about becoming. But not everything in the scenting room is sacred. Behind a column, you overhear two women exchanging hushed barbs. One accuses the other of wearing a scent too closely resembling the Shah's favorite concubine. The accused simply smiles and says, "Perhaps he'll mistake me in the dark." A small scandal. A small victory. Perfume as provocation. Quirky tidbit for your sleepy mind. Some bathhouse regulars would secretly plant a dab of scent on their rivals' robes, either as flirtation or sabotage. Imagine arriving home carrying the unmistakable scent of someone else's longing. There were divorces, there were duels, there were poems. All over perfume. You turn from the drama following the scent of lemon balm and mint toward a quieter alcove. An elderly man kneels beside a copper tray filled with crushed herbs. He is carefully mixing a new batch of attar, the Persian word for fragrant oils and essences. He works without looking up, humming something in a scale you don't recognize. Not quite song, not quite prayer. You crouch beside him. He gestures for your wrist and dabs a tiny drop of something golden onto your pulse point. Saffron and fig leaf, he murmurs. For those who carry too much sorrow in their chest. Then he turns back to his tray as if you were never there. You want to ask what he means, but something holds you. Maybe the scent is already working. Historians still argue whether these perfumed rituals were inherited from Indian Ayurvedic traditions or born entirely within Persia's fragrant soil. Some even claim they were introduced by Arab traders and elevated by Persian alchemists. What's certain is this: no one left the hammam without a scent. Even the poor had their favorites: basil water, orange blossom, pine resin, if nothing else. You rise slowly and catch sight of a tile mosaic above the doorway. It's a stylized rose etched in lapis and gold. Just below it, in minuscule Persian script, a line of poetry. He who wears no fragrance is already forgotten by the wind. You let the words sink into you like oil into skin. A young girl appears at your side balancing a tray with tiny bowls of gari, a thick cream made of crushed almonds and milk used to moisturize the skin after scrubbing. She offers it without a word. You dip your fingers in, spread it across your arms, your shoulders, your collarbone. It cools instantly, then melts into warmth. Your skin drinks it in like desert soil touched by rain. Another joke floats in your head. You've officially become a dessert. Rose-scented, saffron-oiled, almond cream glazed. Delicious. Someone chuckles near the curtain, as if they heard your thought. You're not entirely sure they didn't. As you begin to move again, you pass a group gathered around a shallow basin filled with pomegranate peels, cinnamon bark, and warm water. Each takes a turn dipping a scarf or sash into the mixture, imbuing their fabric with scent. It's a final touch before re-entering the world. One man murmurs, "So they'll remember me as I pass even if they never knew my name." You nod, though no one's looking. There's one last basin near the edge of the chamber. This one is different. Instead of herbs or spices, it contains dark water tinged with crushed violet petals. The scent is subtle, almost ghostly. A few drops are meant to be dabbed behind the ears. A tradition, they say, for those preparing to speak truths they've never dared speak before. You hesitate. Then you reach, just a drop. You leave the scenting chamber with that drop of violet still lingering behind your ear, a whisper of boldness against your skin. The next room welcomes you with a quiet rush of water, and the soft murmur of many voices in parallel, overlapping gently like silk threads in a loom. This is the heart of the hammam, the washroom. The heat is still here, but gentler now, softened by the movement of water and bodies. In the center lies a large sunken marble platform gently heated from below. Steam spirals up from silver basins, set into its edges, and around it, people recline like petals around a flower. A quiet ritual unfolds. Bodies are scrubbed, oiled, and doused in rhythm, the scene almost musical. You find a spot warm and dry and settle down with a sigh that draws no attention. Soon an attendant approaches, older, muscled, with a face like worn leather and hands like loaves of bread. He gestures for you to lie back, and you do with the trust you didn't realize you were capable of. This is the Keys ritual. With a rough mitt made of goat hair and centuries of technique, he begins to scrub your arms, your shoulders, the small of your back. The sensation is intense. Not painful, but assertive. Like being remembered too hard. Dead skin rolls away in gray ribbons. You're pretty sure you just shed your last 3 regrets. He doesn't speak, but you catch a glint in his eye as he lifts your arm and makes a joke by mock flicking one particularly flaky piece off like a feather. You chuckle. He grins. The tension breaks like thin ice. Mainstream historians agree this exfoliation wasn't just for cleanliness, it was status. A good kisa left you gleaming. A poor one left you raw. In royal circles, people even boasted of whose mitt was softest, whose strokes were most even. Entire careers rose and fell on that single square of cloth. He douses you with a basin of warm water poured high so it falls in a perfect sheeting arc. It hits your chest with a soft thud. and splashes out like a breath being released. You exhale without realizing you'd been holding anything in. Near you, a woman is being scrubbed by her friend. Their laughter is the low, secret kind, less ha-ha and more you'll never believe what I just heard. They speak in codes, only they understand a half-rolled eye, a clucked tongue, a raised eyebrow after the word merchant. You don't need a translation. Bathhouses weren't just for washing, they were theaters of the human experience, especially for women. In female-only hammams, women could be themselves more fully than almost anywhere else. Hair uncovered, bodies unhidden. Voices raised not in song but in gossip flirtation, storytelling grief. One fringe account, half disbelieved by academics, tells of an entire political alliance formed in a women's hammam. Daughters of rival clans supposedly met in steam, shared honeyed sweets, and ended a feud that had lasted 2 generations, all while exfoliating. You shift slightly as the Keystmaster works down to your calves. He taps your foot with his knuckle. "Too much standing," he murmurs. Your muscles scream like tired oxen. It's unclear if he's insulting you or diagnosing you. Either way, he's not wrong. He finishes with one final sweep across your spine, then rests the mitt beside you like a priest laying down a sacred text. His task complete, he bows not deeply but with intention, and walks off to tend to another body in need of remembering. You lie there a moment longer, skin tingling, body raw in the best way. Then someone calls across the room. You turn. It's a man with a crooked smile and a thin mustache. He holds up a bar of something greenish-brown sabuni darmani, a traditional herbal soap made from olive oil and laurel. "You'll never find this in the bazaar," he says proudly, "unless you marry my cousin." You smirk. A harmless flirtation. The hammam runs on them. He tosses you the soap. You catch it, sniff it, sharp. Earthy grounding. You keep it. If nothing else, it smells like a good story. Historians still argue whether the hammam was primarily a medical institution or a social one. There are records of doctors prescribing steam baths for everything from melancholy to flatulence. But those same records mention guests leaving with lighter hearts and juicier rumors. So maybe it was both pharmacy and salon, altar and lounge. You sit up now slowly as the air cools around your damp skin. A few people are helping one another rinse friends, family, lovers. It's impossible to tell. And truly it doesn't matter here. Proximity is permission. You spot a tiny carving etched into the marble near your bench. A date partly worn, 11/21. Below it a single word, Bacht. Luck or fate. Or both, depending on your mood. You're not sure who etched it. A young bride, maybe. A traveler, a soldier returned home. But the stone holds it still, a whisper of someone else's pause, right where you're sitting now. You touch the carving gently. A few final splashes echo nearby and steam curls around your wrists like a cat rubbing past. You rise, clean in body, uncertain in spirit, but oh, you smell divine. You step carefully off the marble platform toes, curling slightly on the warm, wet stone. The Kisei ritual has left your skin polished, tingling, and strangely new, as if you've been peeled and repainted by steam and salt. Your reflection in a nearby basin startles you. You look too relaxed to be yourself. In the next chamber, the air feels looser, more alive. This is the women's section, or at least it would be on another day. In some hammams, men and women alternated usage by day of the week. In others, there were entirely separate buildings. But in the more elaborate urban bathhouses like the one you're imagining now, women had their own wing, their own rules, their own kingdom. And oh, what a kingdom it was. Imagine hair untied backs, arched voices unbound. A place where rank softened and secrets flew freer than the scent of cinnamon. In here, women laughed with their mouths wide open. They schemed marriages, whispered about courtly affairs, tested perfumes behind curtains, and critiqued each other's fashion with surgical precision. One mainstream record describes the hammam as the salon, the parliament, and the theater of the Persian woman. Which is historian speak. For this was where the real stuff happened. You peek through the arched lattice, just an imagined moment, and what you see feels timeless. Two girls scrub each other's backs with cheerful ferocity. A mother smooths oil into her daughter's hair while humming a lullaby neither of them quite remembers the words to. An older woman leans into her reflection, pinching her cheeks with the intensity of someone preparing for a party, even if there isn't one. Over in the corner, a group of matrons sit in a loose circle. Their towels are folded into makeshift thrones. Their laughter bursts like bubbles. One leans forward with mock seriousness. If my husband spends one more night dreaming of his horse, I'll have him sleep in the stables. The others erupt. Quirky tidbit, there was a phrase common in 17th century Persia to settle something in steam. It meant to argue a disagreement or propose a plan while in the hammam, often among women. And apparently many social alliances and rivalries were forged over scrubbing mitts and rose water. You move along the edge of the chamber invisible in your dreamlike journey watching. A girl no more than 10 walks proudly through the steam, holding a brass tray with a cup of sweet tea. She moves like royalty. Maybe one day she will be. In the far corner, a courtesan reclines her robe slightly more open than the others, her gaze calm and assessing. She's not here for cleaning, she's here for listening. You can tell. Her ear is tilted toward a pair of noble women speaking too carelessly, unaware that gossip in a hammam is like dye in water. It spreads whether you want it to or not. Historians still argue whether these bathhouses gave women more agency, or simply offered the illusion of freedom within controlled boundaries. But what's undeniable is that women used them, sharpened their minds, broadened their networks, even challenged the expectations placed on them. All with a wet towel and a warm smile. The steam rises, curling into arabesques near the domed ceiling. You pause to admire the tilework, faded indigo vines curling into delicate blossoms. But if you squint, you see something else, tiny script hidden in the patterns. Not words, names. Dozens of them. Etched in glaze with a fingertip or a hairpin. Some long, erased, some bold. This was a thing. Girls would write their names in the hammam tiles, secret marks of presence, of friendship, of small rebellion. Some left poems, others just a date. One scholar claimed to have found a full declaration of love hidden behind a water spout in a Shiraz hammam. A woman's name followed by another. Love, real and forbidden, forever sealed in tile and steam. You reach a smaller room off to the side, a quiet space meant for resting after washing. The women here lie sprawled on cushions, damp and glowing. One cradles a lute strumming gently, not for performance but for memory. The melody isn't Persian, it's older, you feel it. A girl beside her hums along, then abruptly asks, "Do you think we're cleaner now?" Her companion shrugs and says, "Cleaner maybe. Lighter." "Definitely." You pause at that. Cleanliness, after all, wasn't just about health. It was spiritual, symbolic. In Zoroastrian belief, cleanliness helped align the body with the forces of good. In Islam, ritual purity was a gateway to prayer. And in Persian poetry, to be washed was to be reborn, not just purified, but restored to one's truest self. You feel that now. Even though you're not a woman, not really here, not really listening, you still feel the echo. The hammam doesn't care about the specifics. It only asks, what are you shedding today? You sit beside a decorative basin, watch droplets cling to the curved rim. Your reflection bobs in them blurred, blooming unfamiliar. You dip your fingers in. From somewhere behind you, soft laughter. Someone whispers your name or something like it. A breeze. A ghost? Maybe it's nothing, but it leaves a warmth in your chest. You linger by the basin, fingertips tracing the water's edge when a shadow moves behind you. A gentle one, deliberate. You don't startle. In the hammam, shadows are normal. Expected. It's the place where people glide, not walk. Speak softly, not shout. Reveal themselves by accident and intention both. The figure is short-cloaked in a light cotton robe dyed the color of old apricot and moves like a dancer trained to be invisible. You realize after a moment's hesitation that this person is a eunuch. You've heard stories of them, of course, servants not quite belonging to either world trusted by courts to carry messages, guard harems, whisper truth without ever owning them. But seeing one up close is different. His face's angular movements precise. He doesn't speak, but everything he does says something. He gestures toward the corridor with a slight bow of the head. And you follow, not because you must, but because you're curious. You've never been led through a bathhouse before, especially not by someone who seems like he knows everything and has been told to say nothing. The corridor is narrow, almost too warm with thick steam that curls like script around your ankles. Muffled voices drift from other rooms, some laughing, some pleading, one reciting poetry with a rhythm that tugs at your chest. Historians still argue whether eunuchs were merely instruments of empire or secret power brokers in their own right. On paper, they were silent stewards. In reality, they were the gatekeepers to intimacy, the keepers of secrets, too delicate for official record. You wonder if this man beside you has carried more truths in his eyes than most kings have in their scrolls. He stops by a chamber and stands aside. Inside a small domed space with only one bench, a hanging lantern, and a basin carved from black stone. This isn't for washing, this is for speaking. He bows again, lower this time, and retreats. You're left in a room that feels more confessional than functional. Someone else enters after a few quiet moments. A man, younger than you expected. Hair-damp robe darker where it clings. He sits across from you without a word. There is no formality, only steam, only space. Then he speaks. I was told you listen. A pause. I've done something foolish. You don't reply. You're not here to. The bathhouse listens through anyone willing to stay still long enough. He explains haltingly how he's fallen for someone far above his rank. A noble's wife. The affair was brief, maybe imagined, maybe more. But now the noble is returning from campaign and the young man is terrified. Not of punishment, but of silence. Of never being remembered. He looks up. Will you remember me? You nod. Even if you forget the details, you'll remember the shape of this moment. The vulnerability pressed between soap-slicked walls and an overheated heart. This kind of confession wasn't unusual in the hammam. While mainstream historians focus on the political or architectural aspects, fringe records suggest the hammam was one of the few places where truth could be spoken without echo. No scribes, no judgment, just hot air and old stones. Quirky tidbit in some regions, the hammam was believed to have a spirit hammami, a kind of bathhouse ghost who recorded everything said in steam and passed it along to the dead. Not to punish, just to archive. You wonder if he's listening now. The young man leaves after bowing, once robes swaying like the final word in a poem. You sit alone again, feeling the room stretch and shrink as the heat pulses. You've said nothing, but you feel full. When you leave the chamber, the eunuch is waiting. He offers you a cup small ceramic glazed in deep lapis. Inside tea, sharp with mint and something smoky beneath. You sip, and it's like biting into a moment from someone else's life. He watches you. Then, unexpectedly, he speaks. Your shoulders are more relaxed than before. You laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it's true. He leads you down another hallway. Here the walls are darker, the tiles older. You realize this is the quieter part of the hammam, where those who don't want to be seen come to fade into the background. The edges of society, the watchers, the whispered. In one alcove, a blind woman is combing her hair, each motion exact, reverent. In another, two elderly men sit side by side, foreheads pressed together, hands clasped not as lovers or brothers, but as mirrors. Two old flames watching each other flicker. A boy passes with a bundle of fresh towels, face flushed from carrying more weight than his arms should. You take one from the stack and help lighten his load. He doesn't speak, but you see it in his eyes, thank you. The hammam teaches you that not every story needs a voice. Some just need a witness. You follow the curve of the tiled wall, hand trailing along the cool glaze still warm beneath your palm. The hammam bends gently here, the architecture never quite offering a straight line. Corners are softened paths deliberately indirect, as if the place wants you to lose your way and find something else instead. Not directions, not clarity. Maybe just a version of yourself that can only emerge in mist. The next chamber opens gradually like a yawn. You enter under a horseshoe arch, its mosaic frame chipped in places, but still vivid with teal lapis and gold. You blink the air, here's different. Softer. Thicker. Laced with quiet laughter and a strange kind of reverence. This is the storytelling room. Not every bathhouse had one, but the finest hammams of Shiraz, Isfahan. And Kashan preserved a space like this, a slightly raised platform in the center, surrounded by benches with lanterns that hang low like sleepy stars. There's a quiet expectancy in the air, like the pause before music begins. You sit on a cushion near the edge, your towel wrapped snugly, still damp with warmth. At the center sits a woman with silver-threaded hair fingers curled around a carved cane, not out of need, but ceremony. She doesn't speak immediately. She's waiting for the steam to thicken, for the hush to deepen, for the final listener to settle in. Then she begins. The story, of course, is half true. They always are. It's about a girl born in the belly of a bathhouse who learned to read faces before she read scrolls, who rose from pouring water over strangers' backs to pouring wisdom into kings' ears, who never left the hammam but somehow ruled the city from within it. Mainstream history has no name for this girl, but in oral traditions she's called Afsaneh, legend. The storyteller's voice is low and lilting, paced like a dream that doesn't care if you wake or not. The chamber leans toward her. Listeners wrap themselves tighter in their towels, not out of modesty, but anticipation. No one moves. No one needs to. You close your eyes. In the tale, Afsaneh hides messages in jasmine oil bottles. She uses scent to signal strategy, placing a drop behind her ear, if it's safe, or on her wrist if it's war. Her life unfolds in steam warnings, whispered in the rinse basin, vows exchanged in the scrubbing room. Heartbreak folded into a towel left behind. She is everywhere. She is nowhere. And in the end, she disappears like all good stories, with a final laugh and a lock of scented hair. You open your eyes again. The storyteller finishes. No applause. Just a long, shared exhale. And then a small bowl is passed around filled with pistachios, dates, and cubes of halva dusted with cinnamon. A post-story offering. A thank you to the tongue that labored and the ears that received. You take a piece of halva. It melts like a promise. Sweet and soft with just a hint of spice. Quirky tidbit many hammams hired professional storytellers' knuckles who recited tales from the Shahnameh Persian myths and romantic tragedies. But some of the best were amateurs, old women, wandering poets, or former servants with nothing to lose and too many memories to keep to themselves. Historians still argue whether these stories altered public opinion, reinforced social values, or were simply a form of entertainment. But one thing is certain: words shared in steam. Linger. They enter pores. They scent the mind. You rise and wander through the room, slowly absorbing the stories as they ripple through the air. A boy recites his own improvised tale to an indulgent audience of 3 friends. Something about a talking camel and a cursed towel. They laugh so hard they fall sideways off their bench feet, kicking in the air like toddlers. You pass an alcove where a lone figure sits scribbling into a damp scroll. Ink smudges with every line. She seems unbothered. Maybe she knows the words don't need to last. They just need to be released. On the far wall, someone has etched a single line into the tile using a piece of broken ceramic. You lean close to read it. If a secret survives the steam, it deserves to be told. You don't know who wrote it, but you agree. A bell rings faintly, no louder than a yawn, and the storyteller rises with slow grace. Her cane taps twice a signal you don't understand, but everyone else seems to. The room begins to empty. Quietly. Gratefully. Like a heart releasing tension it didn't realize it held. You follow last still tasting cinnamon on your tongue, still hearing the echo of Afsane's laughter behind your ear. As you leave the chamber, someone whispers to you, not quite a voice, more like the memory of one tell your own story. Even if no one listens, you nod. Even though you're alone. You drift onward, cinnamon sweet and story stung through the hush of the bathhouse's inner corridors. Your towel has dried and then dampened again, caught in the breath of the hammam itself, which exhales from its tiled lungs in slow, steady rhythm. Here near the center of the oldest section, the heat deepens, not in temperature but in memory. You find yourself stepping into a quieter, narrower chamber, where light slants through a high-grilled window, like slices of golden bread. The walls are darker here, aged marble veined with smoke stains marked by time. And in the silence you hear something unexpected. Spoken charms. Murmured incantations. The rhythmic beat of a palm tapping water 3 times, followed by a hissed phrase you don't quite understand. You've entered the hidden corner where bathhouse magic clings. This room wasn't on any blueprint. No guide would list it. No historian would confirm it. But it's always there. Every hammam has a place where the spiritual leaks through the grout, where women drop pomegranate seeds into fountains and whisper names, where salt is scattered in corners after a heated argument, where old men press coins into the cracks of tile with prayers that someone's fever breaks by morning. A woman sits cross-legged beside a copper bowl filled with floating rose petals and sliced limes. She hums tunelessly, eyes half-lidded, hands moving over a scrap of fabric, sewing nothing. Or maybe undoing something. You pause at the threshold, instinctively cautious, though not afraid. Mainstream historians don't like to talk about this. They'll call it superstition, folklore, psychological residue. But fringe accounts describe bathhouses as spiritual crossroads. Not holy exactly, but charged. The combination of heat, vulnerability, and silence made them perfect vessels for small magic. A locked door would open more easily if blessed with steam. A barren woman might tie a red thread around the lion's spout and leave an offering of clove. A spell for love might be traced in oil across one's chest while no one was looking. You sit down near the wall, close enough to observe, far enough not to intrude. A younger woman enters, her brows knit, her expression filled with a kind of nervous purpose. She kneels before the older one and offers a lemon, 2 copper coins, and a single strand of her hair. She doesn't speak. She doesn't have to. The older woman accepts the offerings, drops the lemon into the bowl, and begins to stir. The younger one begins to cry, but softly, in the way people do when they've waited too long to release it. You look away respectfully. The water isn't just for bathing here, it's for binding. Quirky tidbit. There's a well-known but rarely discussed tradition among Persian midwives who would visit the hammam before delivering a difficult birth. They'd take steam-rubbed saffron into their hands and recite prayers while pacing counterclockwise around the hottest room. This act, known as chark-i-omer, the turning of life, was said to soften the gates between worlds. You hear soft footsteps and see an older man approaching, wearing the green sash of an herbalist. He carries a pouch of dried herbs and a small book bound in faded leather. He exchanges a brief nod with the older woman and sets his items beside her bowl. You watch as he opens the book, not to read, but to show the woman a single page. It's filled with tightly scrawled Persian script, and between the lines, tiny smudges of dark oil. She touches one with her pinky, then nods solemnly. He leaves without speaking. The woman dips her fingers into the petal and lime bowl, scoops a few drops into her palm, and flicks the water across the floor in 4 directions. North, east, south, west. You can't explain why, but the air shifts, and suddenly you remember something from earlier. That etched word near the basin, bacht. Luck. Fate. You wonder if it was part of a spell, not just a scribble, a charm for return or forgiveness. Maybe even a goodbye? Historians still argue whether these magical practices were fringe behaviors or quietly mainstream under the skin of Persian society. Officially, magic was frowned upon by religious authorities. But privately, well, no one says no to a little extra luck. And the hammam was neutral ground. You close your eyes for a moment. The scent of rose and lime drifts toward you again, followed by something sharper, camphor perhaps, or burned clove. A cleansing scent. Not to cover, but to remove. You open your eyes and notice that the bowl has been removed. So has the younger woman. Only the sewing woman remains cross-legged in the steam. Now stitching again, though her eyes are closed. You stand not sure whether to bow, speak, or slip away. You choose silence. As you step back into the main corridor, the light feels different. More golden, more aware. And the whisper of an old lullaby follows your steps, even though you know no one is singing. You emerge from the charm-soaked chamber and step quietly into the wide central corridor again, its tiles gleaming now under the gentler light of late afternoon. The heat has softened just a bit, as if even the bathhouse is exhaling. Still damp, still fragrant, you feel a strange lightness, not just on your skin, but inside your bones. As if something unseen was rinsed out of you without asking permission. Ahead, voices rise again, softer now, but colored with amusement. You follow the sound and slip into another adjoining room where the tension in the air isn't magical or spiritual. It's social. This clearly is the men's chamber. Here the energy shifts. Where women floated in waves of laughter and care, this room buzzes with a more guarded rhythm. There's banter, yes, but it's careful. Warm but measured. The kind of conversation where you always listen for what isn't said. You find a spot on a low bench beside a marble basin. A servant pours warm water into a series of nested bowls for a man seated across from you. The man is large, regal, bare-chested, and glistening, his beard perfectly combed and oiled. You'd guess him to be a merchant or a minor noble, too polished to be a laborer, too relaxed to be military. He's not alone. Around him others recline towel-draped, engaged in animated but quiet conversation. Their tones hover between jest and diplomacy, and their glances are sharper than the razors used for head shaves in the outer rooms. This is the hammam, as arena not for wrestling but for wits, for influence. For quiet power moves veiled as casual chats. Mainstream scholars agree Persian bathhouses were places where men of rank viziers, poets, architects, and minor officials gathered not just to clean, but to negotiate. Deals were made here that never touched ink. Alliances were floated on steam. Rivalries diffused with a joke and a shared bar of soap. You watch as a younger man, slim, nervous, clearly out of place, sits down nearby. His towel is knotted too tight, his posture stiff. He's trying not to eavesdrop, but also not to be forgotten. The large merchant notices him and smiles a slow, knowing smile. "You work for Sharif Al-Khani, don't you?" the merchant asks. The young man stammers. I only carry scrolls." The merchant leans back. Scrolls carry more than words. Laughter ripples from the others. Not cruel, just instructive. A reminder. In the hammam, everything is observed. You turn toward the far end of the room where two men lie side by side on a raised platform, both receiving massages from wiry attendants with practiced hands. The room smells faintly of eucalyptus and smoke. Someone has placed burning bark in a brass bowl in the corner. One of the men, a soldier judging by the scars on his chest, sighs deeply and mutters, "The Shah should settle disputes like this. Lock both sides in a steam room until they either agree or faint." His companion laughs. The steam would melt their honor faster than any sword. You chuckle under your breath. You're starting to get it the way everything here is half truth, half theater. A quirky bit of trivia: in some cities, bathhouses had informal pecking orders. Where you sat, how close you were to the furnace, even what towel color you used, it all meant something. A noble's towel might be edged with embroidery. A craftsman might bring his own soap. And a servant, he knew never to sit before he was asked. Historians still debate whether these hierarchies were self-imposed or enforced by tradition. The truth is likely both. Even in a place built to equalize, where all are bare skin glistening, stripped of weapons and boots, status still slips in through tone, glance, and towel fold. A small commotion draws your eye. A masseur has spilled a bowl of oil. It splashes across the stone floor, golden and glinting. He kneels to wipe it, muttering apologies. The noble merchant watches, then waves a hand. "Don't scrub it. Leave it. It's the most honest thing on the floor today." A few chuckles. One short cough that might be a laugh, and the conversation resumes. You're starting to see how hammams worked like pressure valves. The empire outside might grind and march and decree, but inside these warm walls, people recalibrated, softened, plotted even, and no one left quite the same. You pour water over your arms from a copper bowl and notice how much your skin glows now. You've sweated, been scrubbed, scented, and softened. But here, amid these murmurs and half smiles, you realize you've also absorbed something. a rhythm, a lesson, maybe even a mask. You stand. Not because you're done, but because you're full. As you leave the room, one of the older men calls out, not unkindly, "Tell the furnace boy to add more fig bark." "Would you?" The heat's growing too polite. You nod. There are hierarchies, but there's also shared heat. And that counts for something. You step out into a narrower hallway now, shoulders looser, footsteps light, trailing the echo of that last chuckle like a faint spice in your wake. The steam thickens again, and the tiled floor grows slick beneath your bare feet. There's a hum in the air, deeper than before, not a sound, but a sensation. Something old. Something waiting. You round a corner and stop. Carved into the stone wall is a deep-set basin beneath a worn inscription. The lettering is Persian, faded with time, but still legible if you squint. You read aloud under your breath, to heal, to cleanse, to carry. Below the inscription, something's been scratched into the marble much more recently. A name, a date, and a tiny crude drawing of flame curled inside a drop of water. You can't tell if it's a symbol, a memory, or a warning. It's behind the furnace, you realize. You've wandered into the back chamber, the one the masseurs and attendants rarely speak of, but all know exists. You duck beneath a low arch and feel the heat deepen. Here the walls sweat more than you do. The air grows thick and slightly metallic. You hear the furnace before you see it, a low roar, not unlike the belly of a lion, just before it rouses. Then you smell it: fig bark, burnt almond, a faint trace of ash and rose stems. This is the belly of the hammam. A great bronze furnace sits in the center of the room, flanked by stone cisterns and rows of bundled firewood. A boy no older than 15 tends it, face-flushed, red shirt soaked through. He doesn't look up at you right away. He's feeding it with practiced hands, sliding slats of dry bark and bits of resin into the open mouth of fire. When he finally glances over, his eyes gleam like polished onyx. "You're not supposed to be back here," he says without malice. You raise your hands in mock apology. "I got lost," he snorts softly. "We all do." You step forward cautiously. The heat is nearly unbearable now. The floor beneath your feet is warm to the touch. The air ripples like a mirage. Mainstream sources will tell you the genius of Persian bathhouses lay in their Hippocaust systems networks of brick channels under the floors and walls carefully designed to circulate hot air from furnaces like this one. The Romans may have invented it, but the Persians refined it. Made it beautiful. Made it hum. But here's a little known detail. Many old hammams place the furnace below the very heart of the bathhouse, the dome itself, believing that heat, like wisdom, should rise from the hidden depths. You sit beside the boy on a stone step, the fire crackling before you. You expect him to ignore you. Instead, he says, "Want to hear a secret?" You nod. He leans in slightly, voice low and serious. "This furnace has never gone cold." You blink. "Ever?" He shakes his head. "They say the flame was lit the day the Shah's mother gave birth in the hammam, and it's been burning ever since. Passed from boy to boy, we tend it, feed it, guard it." He shrugs. "Maybe it's not true, but I've never seen it die." Quirky tidbit: there was an ancient belief, especially in Zoroastrian-influenced regions, that fire was not merely a source of heat, but a living force. Sacred. A carrier of memory. Bathhouse furnaces, though mundane to most, were sometimes guarded as if they were holy. You glance at the side wall. There, etched in charcoal, are rows of names, hundreds, maybe thousands furnace boys over the centuries. Some are paired with short phrases dyed. Young sang better than he stoked. Vanished in the year of dust. You ask, did you write your name yet? He shakes his head. Not until I've seen the fire flicker. You nod, though you don't quite understand what that means. Historians still argue whether these furnace rooms were symbolic centers or just the dirty work that no one wanted to write about. But the emotional truth is unmistakable. This is the heart. The hammam breathes because this boy and those before him kept feeding it, sweating beside it, speaking to it in a language made of ash and ritual. You rise slowly, skin glowing now from both steam and something more primal. Before leaving, you reach for a handful of fig bark and toss it into the fire. It flares. Golden, bright, brief. The boy watches and grins. Now you've been marked. You smile and step away. Marked by what you're not sure. But it stays with you as you wind back through the hallway, back toward voices, toward cooler air. As you go, your shadow stretches behind you long and slow in the furnace's glow. And you wonder if it too carries some of that ancient warmth now. You emerge from the furnace corridor, blinking the brighter air, cooling your flush skin in an instant. Your towel feels damp again, but now it's fragrant fig bark rose stem, and the faintest hint of something metallic like heat itself left a fingerprint. You walk slowly as though the ground beneath your feet might still be humming with that sacred burn. The hammam is quieter now, not empty but settled. Softer voices, fewer footsteps. The steam no longer charges forward, it drapes, lingers. You find yourself in another room, small, mosaic-lined, and framed by low wooden benches. The walls are cool to the touch, their colors faded in places with flecks of gold leaf that glimmer even beneath the haze. And on one bench sits someone entirely unlike the others you've seen. A figure wrapped in layered robes of muted green and gray. A sash across the waist. A gaze steady, unreadable, somehow sharper than it should be in a place this soft. You recognize the presence instantly, not because of appearance, but because of posture. Deliberate, still, observing from the edges. This is an inspector. Bathhouses, for all their warmth and beauty, were places of tension too. Spaces of negotiation, not just between people, but between freedom and regulation. And inspectors, they were the guardians of that line. Mainstream history confirms the existence of hammam inspectors appointed by rulers or religious authorities to ensure order, hygiene, and propriety. Their tasks ranged from the mundane checking for clean water, safe heating, fair pricing, to the intrusive monitoring moral conduct, quelling subversive speech. Some were feared, some mocked, most ignored unless they appeared like this one in the quietest corners. He notices you, of course. You've entered his radius. But he doesn't speak right away. Instead, he watches a group of boys laughing over a spilled bucket of rinse water. One slips landing with a wet smack and a burst of laughter. The inspector's lips twitch. Not a smile. Something else. He finally says, "The steam makes people honest." Then dishonest again. You say nothing, letting the thought sit between you both. He turns towards you, his voice a little lower. Did you know there was once a conspiracy uncovered in a hammam just like this? A group of scribes, teachers, and market men met every third week. Whispered about taxes, land, change. You raise an eyebrow. What happened? They were overheard, not by a servant. Not by a spy. By the tile. You smile, unsure if he's joking. Historians still argue whether bathhouses were hotbeds of rebellion or just homes for steam-bloated stories. But fringe accounts mention incidents' curious overlaps of rumor and truth. One hammam in Hamadan allegedly hosted a rebellion's first meeting, disguised as a cousin's bridal wash. Another hid banned manuscripts and hollow tiles behind the rinsing alcove. You glance now at the tiles near your seat. One is slightly mismatched darker with a tiny chip shaped like a bird. You wonder what's behind it. The inspector follows your gaze. Nothing in here is accidental, he says. Not even mistakes. A servant walks past, nods politely. The inspector offers no return gesture, just watches as the steam trails from the man's shoulders and curls up into the arch above. I used to come here when I was young, he murmurs. Before the sash, I thought it was a place where time stood still. You glance at him, and now he exhales. Now I know it's where time collects, like sediment, like coins under the tiles. He rises surprisingly graceful and begins to walk. Not toward the door, toward a narrow set of steps half hidden behind a curtain. He doesn't invite you, but he also doesn't forbid you from following. Naturally you do. The steps creak underfoot. You hadn't realized how rarely hammam floors make sound. Up here above the main rooms is something unexpected, a small walkway running behind a screen of lattice and smoke-stained wood. From here you can see down into the main chambers. Not clearly, but enough. The inspector leans on the railing. This is where the keepers watched. You mean the workers? No. He replies. The readers. The ones who saw what no one said aloud. Below a pair of lovers sit close hands nearly touching. A nobleman adjusts his towel before speaking in confidence to another man, whose eyes flick toward the door every few seconds. A servant washes alone humming something from the mountains, a song so old it has no written name. The inspector whispers, "It's not just bodies that get washed here." You nod. You feel it too. Quirky tidbit in some hammams this level was used for more than observation. It was where attendants slept, where old towels were hung to dry, where the occasional matchmaker or astrologer was smuggled in for a discreet consultation. You hear soft laughter below as someone tells a joke, something about a donkey, a spice merchant, and a prince who couldn't count. The inspector turns. Watch long enough and everyone becomes familiar. Then, without waiting for a reply, he descends the steps and vanishes into the steam. You remain a moment longer gazing down, unseen and seeing. The hammam shifts again in your mind, not just a sanctuary, not just a confessional, but a theater. And you've just stepped behind the curtain. You descend the creaking wooden stairs, slowly, one hand grazing the wall for balance, the other brushing against the fabric of the curtain, as if unsure whether to return to the stage or stay in the wings. When your feet touch the tile floor again, it feels like stepping back into a dream you briefly awoke from. The air is warm, familiar, but now you see its currents. You see how glances pass, how silences are placed, how each basin, each flick of a towel holds choreography. And the architecture, it finally speaks to you. Now that you've been above it, looked down on it, traced its seams and secrets, you begin to notice the patterns. Not the pretty floral mosaics, not the hand-painted stars across the domes. No, it's the placement. The deliberate angles. The walls that bend instead of turn. The rooms that spiral inward, always inward, until you lose the outside entirely. This place was designed to control. Not just temperature or moisture, but emotion, movement, intimacy. You find yourself wandering slowly through another corridor, narrow, curved, lined with inset alcoves, each just big enough for a small bench and a single basin. You sit in one instinctively and immediately feel the effect you are hidden, but you can still hear everything. Echoes from 2 rooms away ripple faintly across the stone. Not clear, but understandable. Mainstream historians recognize this design: acoustic focus points, chambers, and corridors crafted to funnel sound along curved surfaces. Architects knew that steam carried whispers farther than shouts, and they used it with intent. In some hammams, even the dome's shape amplified certain tones, sending them spiraling upward in a halo of conversation. You pour water from a clay jug into the basin. The sound echoes in a way you didn't expect: low, rounded, pleasant. You pour again. You listen. You begin to notice how every room you've entered has shaped your voice. You remember something the inspector said: watch long enough and everyone becomes familiar. And now the rooms themselves feel familiar. The path you've walked no longer seems random. It's been guiding you. Through heat, through scent, through sound. You rise and walk again. Soon you arrive at a small chamber with mirrors set into all four walls. A rare sight. The mirrors are worn and fogged, their silver backing aged to a dull haze, but they still reflect. Your shape multiplied, rippled, surrounded. You step into the center and the effect is dizzying. 100 versions of you, all slightly off, watching you from behind the steam. It was once said that mirrors in hammams served two purposes. Vanity, yes, but also introspection. To reflect while softened by heat, while stripped of rank ambition posture. When no one's watching except you. You lean closer, you look tired, but not worn. More like unwound, uncoiled. And then you notice something faint. A name scratched faintly into the bottom right corner of the mirror. Farhad. Below it, I told the truth once. Here. You touch the etching, wondering what truth he spoke. Whether he was alone, whether he regretted it or cherished it. Quirky tidbit mirror inscriptions were surprisingly common in historical hammams. Some were romantic, others devotional. A few were petty complaints etched in soapstone script. One scholar even claimed to have found a quote from the Quran next to an old shaving mirror, its calligraphy distorted so cleverly in the silver that only the pious would see it. You step away, leaving your reflection behind, and move into another corridor. This one shorter, cooler, lined with small vents near the floor air channels. You kneel and feel the soft pull of air being drawn toward the furnace rooms. This too was intentional. The hammam breathes. And like all lungs, it must exhale. You sit again, this time near a wall carved with decorative niches, each one once home to a small oil lamp. A few still burn. Most are empty. You run a finger along the stone and feel the indentation of centuries. Some niches have faint markings, perhaps tally marks, perhaps initials. A gentle sound breaks your thought, a voice humming. Female, alone, no words, just melody. It's coming from the next room. You follow quietly, slowly, as if not to scare the sound. You peek inside. There, a young woman sits cross-legged, eyes closed, bathing her feet in a shallow pool. Her head tilts slightly as she hums. Lips parted just enough for the tune to escape. She doesn't notice you. Or maybe she does and simply doesn't care. The melody curls into the steam like thread through water. Familiar but unplaceable. It's the kind of tune that sounds like it belongs to everyone, yet no one could name it. Historians still argue whether the architectural design of hammams was more aesthetic or psychological. Whether the echoing domes and curving corridors were meant to dazzle or to soothe. But standing here listening to that woman's song, drift through space perfectly shaped to carry it, you understand the truth. It was both. Function, yes, but also feeling. The woman finishes her song and dips her hand into the water, scattering the reflection. You don't say anything, you just turn away and walk softly, your steps echoing more quietly than before. The hammam doesn't erase you. It reflects you, distorted at first, then softened. It shapes your silence into something new. You move now with the confidence of someone who has been absorbed into the rhythm of a place. Not a guest, not an observer, but something in between. Your towel clings to you loosely, its fibers saturated with scent and heat and secrets. The air ahead is lighter. You sense without being told that you're approaching something different. Then, almost without warning, the space opens up. You've entered the central dome. It's vast, vaulted, and breathtaking. The kind of room that makes you instinctively inhale not just for breath, but for reverence. Light pours in from above through star-shaped cutouts, their rays casting speckled gold across the marble like celestial freckles. Steam rises toward the ceiling and disappears into that glowing void. You tilt your head back. The ceiling, oh the ceiling. Delicate tilework spirals outward from the center, each motif more intricate than the last. Stars inside stars. Flowers blooming into geometry. The colors are softened by age deep. Lapis oxidized silver fading vermilion. And at the very center, painted high above a pair of eyes. They watch not with judgment, but with permanence. You're not alone here. A few others recline along the curved benches that ring the room. Some lounge with their eyes closed, arms draped over cushions. Others sit upright, backs against the walls, towels across their laps, murmuring in low tones. There's no urgency, no task, just being. In the center lies a shallow octagonal pool, its surface perfectly still. It reflects the dome above, so the starry ceiling seems to float twice, once in the air, once in the water. You dip your fingers into it and swirl gently. The reflected stars ripple, dissolve. Mainstream scholars have long marveled at the mathematics of these domes. They were not only beautiful, they were engineered to amplify heat and quiet sound. Some could hold voices like a chambered nautilus carrying a whisper across the room with unnerving clarity. But some fringe historians whisper something else, that the domes were oracles. Not mystical, but symbolic. Their vastness reminded bathers of the sky, the cosmos, their place beneath it all. That even while naked, scrubbed and scrubbed again, they were still part of a grander design. You lie back on one of the bench's arms, splayed the dampness of the cushion, wrapping around your spine like moss. Your heartbeats sync with the drips falling into the center pool. You hear someone humming again, that same formless melody from earlier, drifting in and out of the acoustics like a fish beneath the surface. Then a hush. A group enters through the far archway. Their robes are finer, their manner more formal. At their center, a tall figure robes folded crisply, a silver emblem at the breast. It's the Shah. Or rather it was once, for this moment is memory, not performance. What you see is a re-echo of history, perhaps even myth. He steps into the center of the room, discards his outer robe without ceremony, and lowers himself into the octagonal pool. Two attendants move behind him like shadows, neither touching him nor speaking. The others form a quiet semicircle at a distance. And here's where it becomes interesting, because the Shah says nothing. No commands, no decrees, no poetry. Just one slow exhale as the water reaches his shoulders. Quirky tidbit. It's recorded that more than one Persian ruler made surprise visits to public bathhouses. Not to display power, but to remember humility. To feel the heat that the poor felt. To be touched by the same soap, the same water. They came to listen. To observe. To shed for an hour the unbearable weight of ruling. You sit motionless. No one bows. No one reacts. Not because they don't care, but because in this room, even the Shah is just another body in the steam. The attendants hand him a small silver bowl. He pours water over his own head, slowly, carefully, and as he does, the ceiling reflects in beads sliding down his cheeks like mirrored tears. Historians still argue whether this particular bathhouse event ever truly occurred, or if it was a legend created to soften the Shah's image. Either way, it's been told and retold the day the ruler came not to judge, but to sweat, to soak, to remember. The moment passes. The figures rise, towels are draped. The group exits as silently as they entered. The room seems to breathe again. You lean forward, resting your elbows on your knees, staring at the still surface of the pool. Something has shifted. Not in the room. In you. You're reminded of the inscription carved near the mirror I told the truth once. Here. You understand it now. The hammam and its quiet geometry disarms you. The heat strips ego. The water reveals shape. The echo brings back your words with softened edges. You lie back again, body open, eyes half-lidded, and for a moment you see yourself reflected in the ceiling. Not as you are now, but as someone remembered. Not important, not powerful, just present. The dome above you watches patient and unblinking. And you finally feel seen fully kindly, as if even the air knows your name. You remain beneath the dome longer than you intended, letting the silence stretch and curve around you like steam over tile. The world outside has faded into myth. Time itself has thinned. It's as though the very air here has memory and you've inhaled enough of it to feel someone else's past floating gently in your chest. Eventually you rise carefully, like lifting a dream without tearing it. Your joints sigh. Your towel clings. The path ahead leads through a narrower corridor, and your footsteps splash softly in the shallow rivulets that always seem to know exactly where to run. You enter a smaller chamber, octagonal again, but cozier. And this one sings with color. Tiny mosaic tiles stretch floor to ceiling, creating a pattern so intricate it blurs when you stare at it too long. Indigo, ochre, emerald, pomegranate red. Each piece glinting faintly through the veil of rising mist. And in the center of the dome above you, something catches your breath. Art. Not just pattern or geometry this time, but figures. Human forms stylized in the Persian miniature tradition, painted directly into the dome. Lovers reclining beneath cypress trees. Musicians strumming gently beneath an archway. Women dancing with long veils trailing like ribbons in water. A boy holding a lotus to his heart. A horse drinking from a golden stream. And there tucked discreetly near the curve of the ceiling's base, a woman scrubbing another's back. Intimate, familiar, mundane, sacred. This was a celebration, a memory, a confession in color. Mainstream historians once believed bathhouses to be relatively austere in their design. Practical, symmetrical, functional. But discoveries in restored hammams, particularly in Yazd and Kashan, revealed ceiling murals hidden beneath centuries of soot and mineral. Behind the grime worlds of painted wonder. Historians still argue whether these images were meant for contemplation or simply decoration. But when you stand beneath them, neck craned, eyes wide, you don't feel like you're looking at art. You feel like the art is looking at you. You sit slowly on a curved marble bench lining the room. Its surface is warm and smooth, its corners softened by generations of leaners, thinkers, singers. Above you, the painted women seem to sway slightly, though you know it's the steam that moves, not them. A boy enters no older than 12. He wears a satchel slung over his shoulder, its flap slightly open to reveal a stack of folded linens and 2 brushes with worn handles. He sets down a bowl of blue pigment and begins dabbing gently at the edge of the mosaic floor, restoring faded color with slow, reverent strokes. He works in silence occasionally, blowing gently to dry the tile before continuing. You watch him for a long time, mesmerized. Eventually you ask, "Do you know who painted the ceiling?" He doesn't look up. No one knows. But they say she sang while she painted. He nods. Only someone in love paints like that. You glance back up at the lovers and the cypress trees, at the horse drinking golden water. The line work is soft, tender. Each figure limned in care, not command. You believe him. Quirky tidbit: a number of anonymous hammam murals have been attributed, though never confirmed, to a mysterious female painter known only in whispered records as Nabane. No formal training, no signature. But the brushwork was said to be unmistakably hers, playful, intimate, with tiny details only visible from the floor looking upward. You lean back and imagine her on scaffolding, bare feet, braced paintbrush between her teeth, as she balanced and hummed and painted for an audience of future strangers she would never meet. And now you're here beneath her cypress trees. A woman enters the room and begins to hum a different tune, gentle and round, threading through the steam like a ribbon. She dips her fingertips in a bowl of henna and begins painting a flower onto the palm of her own hand. A slow, practiced ritual. A prayer in petals. She catches your eye, smiles faintly, and says, "Beauty is still duty even when no one is watching." You nod. It was said that women in the hammam decorated their hands, their faces, even their ankles, not just for weddings or feasts, but because in these walls beauty was a form of truth. Not vanity, not performance, just an expression of life, softness, and tension. The woman finishes her flower, holds her palm up to the lantern light, then folds her fingers gently as though sealing the design like a secret. She leaves without speaking again. And now you are alone with the mural and the boy and the bowl of blue. The boy gathers his brushes. Before leaving, he glances back at the ceiling and murmurs, "They always miss the fox in the corner." You look, and yes, there it is. Small, almost hidden behind a tree. A fox curled like a question mark, eyes open. Watching. Painted in a slightly different style, more vivid, more knowing. You can't help but laugh. Even in a bathhouse, even beneath a painting of peace and pleasure, someone slipped in a fox. A reminder that something is always watching, whether it's art or memory, or you yourself. You rise again, stretching, and as you do, the steam parts above you for a brief moment. The painted sky becomes a reflection of your own blurring dream and design, flesh and fresco, and you wonder how many others sat right here tracing the same stars, the same fox, the same feeling, too many to count. Exactly enough to matter. You leave the mosaic room behind your head, still full of colors and foxes and the whispered traces of paintbrushes. The steam narrows the path ahead, curling around your ankles as if trying to tug you back toward the murals. But you press on, warmed, awakened, slightly amused. The floor grows warmer underfoot again, and you realize you're nearing one of the heating cores. You pause, half expecting to hear the rumble of the furnace you met earlier. Instead, what greets you is stillness. Then a new sound. Breathing. Not yours, deeper, slower. Someone exhaling with rhythm as though in deep concentration. You follow the sound around a curved corridor and step into a chamber far less decorated than the ones before. Here the tiles are unadorned, the ceiling low, no murals, no mirrors, just bare stone and heat. It's not unpleasant, it's grounding, almost womb-like. In the center sits a man cross-legged, steam rising off his shoulders like a second robe. His eyes are closed, arms resting on his knees, palms up. He is still in that way that suggests not sleep, but absolute presence, as if he's communicating with the hammam itself. You hesitate at the edge of the room. He speaks without opening his eyes. "You're late," he says softly. You blink. For what? He opens his eyes now, clear, sharp, amused. The conversation. You sit unsure whether this is invitation or illusion, but he nods as if it was always meant to be. This is not a priest, nor a poet, nor a merchant or a masseur. This is the attar seller, or at least one of them. Attar's concentrated perfume oils were more than scent. In Persian culture, they were symbols, rituals, prescriptions. You didn't just wear a fragrance, you consulted for it. Mainstream historians record the rise of the attar sellers as early as the 9th century part. Perfumers, part pharmacists, part spiritual advisors. And in many hammams, they worked not from shops, but from alcoves like this where the heat opened pores and loosened tongues. The man across from you opens a small leather pouch and pulls out a collection of tiny glass vials, amber, green, cobalt blue. He doesn't ask you what you want. He studies you like a painter choosing a canvas. "Do you dream in color?" he asks. Sometimes he nods. "Do you wake with your jaw clenched?" Yes, he selects a vial, unstoppered it, and holds it beneath your nose. The scent is sharp spiced orange crushed clove and something faintly smoky like the memory of a fire. This one, he says, is for remembering what you've forgotten on purpose. You laugh, a little too quickly. He doesn't smile. Everything you've poured into the tiles follows you. You inhale again. Slower this time. The scent is heavier now. Familiar though you can't name it. He places the vial between you. A drop behind each ear before sleep. Do not listen to music afterward. Only silence. Let it speak. Quirky tidbit ancient attar recipes were often passed through families via oral tradition, and many included ingredients symbolic of memory and thyme frankincense for the past saffron, for clarity, myrrh for grief. Some believed a well-chosen attar could guide dreams, even prevent nightmares. He offers a second vial. This one is different, sweet, almost too sweet. Jasmine, rose, and fig nectar. You feel your body soften just from smelling it. This, he says, is for when you want to be seen clearly and don't care if it hurts. You hesitate. Then do you sell these to anyone? No, he says simply. Only to those the bathhouse delivers. He hands you the vial, your fingers close around it like a secret. Historians still argue whether these attar sellers were truly healers or just clever merchants with good noses and better instincts. But the records are clear. People left them lighter scented and somehow changed. The man reaches into his pouch one last time and pulls out a small cloth bundle. He unfolds it to reveal a simple wooden comb, stained dark with age and oil. He hands it to you. Take this. Before you go. You glance at it. Why? He tilts his head. Because your thoughts are tangled, and the bathhouse cannot do everything. You accept it. The air in the room feels warmer now, but not heavy. Like standing near a person who loves you and hasn't said so yet. The man closes his pouch, folds his legs tighter, and closes his eyes again. Dismissed. Or welcomed endlessly. You rise. As you leave, the scent clings to you, soft spice, slightly haunting. The kind of scent that doesn't settle on your skin but behind your heart. You tuck the vial and the comb into your towel folds and move on. The corridor narrows again. The air cools slightly. And you begin to wonder not if the bathhouse has changed you, but how much of you it knew before you arrived. You walk slower now, as if the attar has thickened the air around you. Or maybe it's just that every step forward feels like parting a veil. The corridor bends again, then opens without warning into a dim alcove lit by a single flickering lamp. There are no attendants here, no mirrors, just a space carved into silence. A long bench curves around the wall, and in its center sits a small platform where once perhaps a brazier stood. But now there's only a folded cushion and the trace scent of something old leather-bound books, honeyed ink, and a whisper of dates steeped in warm wine. Seated cross-legged on the cushion is a man with skin like burnished bronze, and a turban wrapped in tightly folded layers. His hands are stained with saffron and ink, and before him on a low table lies a slender scroll, partially unrolled and weighted with 2 river stones. He looks up. "You followed the scent," he says without question. You nod. You've stopped being surprised by this. He gestures to the empty bench. You sit. The stones click gently as he adjusts the scroll, revealing neat rows of delicate Persian script. You can't read the words from here, but the structure is familiar, measured, poetic, devotional. "I write the things no one speaks aloud," he says, dabbing his fingertip in a dish of powdered indigo and adding a flourish to the final line. Mainstream historians recognize the role of bathhouses as centers of social and physical cleansing. But a few overlooked texts suggest that certain hammams also housed scholars not officially but informally. Poets, copyists, letter writers, men and women who knew how to preserve stories without drawing attention. "People don't confess in court," he murmurs. "They confess in steam, in scent, in silence." He gestures to a tall jar sealed with wax. "Everything said within these walls is written eventually, not all by me. Sometimes the steam writes it first." You raise an eyebrow. You record private conversations. "Not words," he replies. "Just the weight of them. The way he says it, you believe him." Quirky tidbit. In some Persian bathhouses, there were so-called whisper walls, places where guests could murmur secrets into the tile. Not to be heard by others, but to unburden themselves. Some were ritual. Others were desperate. It's said that in Isfahan, a wall known as Divar Adar, the Wall of Sorrows, held more truth than any judge's court. The scribe uncaps a second ink pot, this one with a reddish hue, and picks up a fresh sheet of paper. His handwriting is tiny, flowing full of swoops and eddies. "I write the names of those who carried secrets too heavy for water." He offers you the reed pen. You hesitate. He doesn't push. Just waits. You take the pen. The paper before you is soft, almost cloth-like, its surface humming beneath your fingers. You don't write a name, just a shape. A small curl of a fox's tail, then a dot. The scribe studies it and nods as if it says more than a full poem. "You remember," he says. "That's enough." He carefully folds the paper, presses it into a hidden compartment beneath the scroll tray, and seals it with a dab of fig sap. No sound, no farewell. You rise. As you walk out, your hand brushes a portion of the wall that feels different, cooler, smoother. You look down. There, etched so lightly you almost miss it, is a single phrase, "Truth weighs less when shared." You move forward again into a broader hall, this one lined with a shallow stream of running water. You dip your fingers into it and realize this isn't for bathing, it's for carrying. Water flows past warm and clear, disappearing into a hidden channel. Someone once told you that the water from hammams flowed back into the city through sacred paths, reused for gardens, fountains, even drinking. You wonder if it carries words too. Names, scents. the memory of someone sighing under a dome. You follow the water a little further until you reach a narrow stone bridge spanning it, and there beside it a small wooden box with drawers and a lid and ink cellar station. Empty now, but beside it sits a single scrap of parchment damp with condensation. You pick it up. It reads, "He who smells of fig and sorrow has been seen." You press the parchment to your chest. You've been seen, heard, distilled. This place is not just a bathhouse. It is a manuscript written in scent and silence and skin. And you are a line added carefully without ink, but permanent nonetheless. The parchment still clutched gently in your hand. You pass the small bridge and step into a room where the steam parts like a curtain, revealing something strange, something reverent. You wouldn't have expected this in a place so soaked in gossip and scrubbed shoulders, but here it is. A birthing room. Not used recently from the looks of it, but not forgotten either. The tiles are softer in color, pale yellows and sea glass greens. The light slants in low through a carved screen, dappled and serene. And in the middle of the room is a broad, shallow basin rimmed in copper and set into the floor like a quiet pond. Next to it, a stack of folded cloth-smooth stones warmed by a hidden fire, and bundles of dried herbs tied with red string. This is not for display. This was used, loved, feared. You kneel beside the basin and run your hand along its edge, fingertips grazing old scratches marks made by nervous midwives, sweating mothers, restless fathers, banished to the outer rooms. The echoes here are softer, but somehow deeper. Mainstream scholars rarely mention these rooms, not because they doubt they existed, but because they don't know what to do with them. A bathhouse is easy to catalog when it's about architecture and public rituals. It's harder when it involves blood pain and the moments that blur the line between life and death. But they were real. In some hammams, especially in larger cities, these rooms were reserved for birthing. The heat was believed to ease labor, and the flowing water served to both comfort and cleanse. Midwives would anoint the mother with oils, chant prayers into her palms, and surround her with herbs that called upon strength. Basil for protection, rue for clarity, and marjoram to open the path, as they put it. Fringe records even tell of babies being born directly into warm rinse basins, their first cries echoing beneath domes that had heard centuries of secrets. You sit back on your heels, imagining it the flicker of lantern light, the low murmur of a midwife's lullaby, a first breath drawn amid a room of steam and jasmine. The idea feels impossibly gentle, sacred. You glance up at the ceiling. Here, unlike the grand dome, there is no painting, no mosaic, just plain stone. But in one corner, carved with a fingernail or knife, is a date barely visible through the mineral deposits that have settled there. Next to it, a tiny heart. No name. Quirky tidbit in some bathhouses mothers would return yearly with their children to bathe in the same basin, believing it protected their bond. One tale even tells of a woman who visited alone for 10 years after her child was stillborn, pouring rosewater into the empty pool and singing lullabies into the silence. You lie down now on one of the padded benches beside the basin. The air here is different, quieter but not empty. It hums with presence. 100 stories folded like towels tucked into the corners. Pain softened by steam. Love stitched into stone. A voice speaks gently from the doorway. You didn't hear anyone approach. She bore twins here, the scribe's wife. One lived, one didn't. She still comes on the anniversary, leaves a fig. You sit up. An old woman stands there, robes loose, a towel slung over her shoulder. She's not staff, not quite guest. Perhaps something in between. She crosses the room, drops a small cloth bundle beside the basin, and pats it with reverence. My granddaughter was born in this room, too. Feet first, screamed like a hawk. You smile. What do people leave in return? She shrugs. A prayer, a tear, sometimes a secret. You nod. You understand now. This isn't just a bathhouse chamber, it's a shrine to beginnings and to the griefs that follow close behind. She watches you for a moment, then says, "It's good you came through here." You open your mouth to ask why, but she's already leaving the steam swallowing her as she turns the corner. Historians still argue whether these bathhouse births were acts of necessity or spiritual rites disguised as practicality. But the truth doesn't care what they decide. It breathes here regardless. You turn back to the basin and see resting on its edge something you hadn't noticed before. A small carved lion. Wooden. Worn smooth by decades of steam. Perhaps a child's toy once. Perhaps a talisman. You lift it, feel the warmth it's absorbed from the stone. You press it to your heart. You don't need to understand everything about this room. You only need to know it exists. And as you stand again, moving slowly through the soft air, you realize, in the hammam, not all rebirths begin with a breath. Some begin in silence, in heat, in memory, in the gentlest place you never expected to find. You leave the birthing room with a softness in your step, the carved line still cradled gently in your hand, like a memory you're not yet ready to release. The hallway beyond narrows again, darker now, lit only by amber oil lamps tucked into recessed niches. The steam here has thinned, but the air is heavier, not with heat, but with something you can't quite name. You've arrived at a place of confession, not a chapel, not a shrine, but a room where truth has nowhere left to hide. It's smaller than the others, circular, low-ceilinged, with a single fountain in the center, no wider than your shoulders. The water flows in silence, barely a ripple. The walls are lined with benches wrapped in linen. On each bench, someone sits, men, women, old, young, each alone. Some are wrapped in towels, others fully clothed damp robes clinging to their forms. All of them are silent. At first you think you've stumbled into a ritual. A vigil, maybe, but then you notice the way some people shift. Fidget, rub their arms, lean forward, and stare at nothing. This isn't a planned gathering. These people came here to say something, and perhaps in the hammam's design, this is the only room where they can. You take a place on an empty bench, the lion still warm in your palm. No one speaks. And yet, the air feels crowded with unspoken things. The woman to your left rocks slightly, eyes closed, lips parted just enough to let a silent thought pass through. The man across from you has ink-stained fingers, perhaps the scholar from earlier returned for something he forgot to admit. You close your eyes too. Let it rise. Let it speak. And in that silence, a single confession emerges in your mind, clear, aching, and unfamiliar. Not a secret you've been hiding, but one you've been carrying without realizing it. You let it settle into the steam. Quirky tidbit. Some Persian bathhouses had what were called kabgah ha-ye-ruhi, or spirit nooks. Small, unadorned chambers meant for solitude reflection or whispered confession. There was no priest, no judge. The stone itself was considered witness enough. You open your eyes and notice something curious. Small cracks run along the fountain's edge, not the product of age but of repetition. Like something tapped the same place again and again gently. A cane? A ring a finger. You dip your hand into the fountain. The water is cool, shocking after so much heat, and smooth as velvet. You watch it ripple outward in soft, concentric circles, distorting the reflection of the room. Each face wavers, melts, reforms. You understand now why people come here. Not to speak aloud, but to hear themselves think for the first time in hours. From the corner, a voice finally breaks the hush, not loud, not abrupt, but like the final word of a poem left unfinished. I lied to her, the speaker says, not out of fear, out of love. And it ruined everything. The room remains still. No one looks at him. No one needs to. Another voice minutes later. A woman. I never wanted the child, but I loved her anyway. Then silence again. Each admission is quiet. Gentle. A stone dropped into a pond. You feel the line in your palm growing heavier, and you know what you need to say. You don't say it aloud. You just hold it. Close your eyes, release it, and the stone listens. Historians still argue whether these rooms served any real purpose. They're rarely found in surviving floor plans. Perhaps they were servant quarters, changing rooms, or misidentified waiting areas. But every bathhouse guide knows if you walk far enough, steam long enough, you'll find this room. Even if it's not marked. Because the hammam doesn't just clean skin, it listens, it holds. It remembers without judgment. You rise after some time, no one keeps track in here, and gently place the carved lion on the fountain's edge. A small offering, a token of what you've let go. As you leave, you glance over your shoulder once. The lion stares back with its little painted eyes. And though it cannot speak, it seems to say you may go. I'll carry it from here. The door to the confession chamber closes behind you with a sound softer than a sigh, and you don't look back. You don't need to. The lion stays. And something else does too, the weight in your chest now shifted now, rebalanced like a towel folded with more care than you expected. The hallway before you is darker still, less lit, more instinctive. You follow the gentle downward slope, the path curling towards something older, colder. Your feet pad across smooth stone, then pause. The temperature has dropped. The heat for the first time since you entered the hammam is absent. And it is startling. You shiver. Your towel feels too thin, your body too bare. You're entering what many bathers once called the rinsing truth. The final chamber. The place where warmth leaves and clarity arrives. The sardab. This room is simple domed, yes, but undecorated. Its walls are of pale limestone, the kind that holds chill even in high summer. At the center, a marble bench, and set just behind it, a large cistern filled with cold water. No attendants, no candles, just water. And you. You step forward, hesitant at first, then with acceptance. This is the last part of the ritual, the final dousing. Not symbolic, not optional. You bathe in heat, in scent, in story. But you rinse in reality. Cold, honest, clear. Mainstream historians often downplay the sardab, treating it as a footnote, just another temperature shift to close the pores after hours in the hammam. But to the bathers, it was a reckoning. This is where the dream ends. You sit on the marble bench. The stone is shockingly cold. You draw your towel tighter, not out of modesty, but self-preservation. And then you see it. The bowl. Copper, shallow, heavy in the hand. You lift it, watch it tremble slightly in your grasp. You dip it into the cistern and draw up the cold water. It shines like mercury. You lift the bowl over your head. Pause. You think of everything the steam carried from you, the jokes and the silences, the fox and the mural, the inkless confession, the carved lion you left behind, and with a single breath, you pour. The water hits you like truth, sharp, bracing. You gasp not out of fear, but from the clean honesty of it. This isn't suffering, it's awakening. A second bowl. poured slowly this time, tracing your shoulder, spine, and knees. The heat that has clung to your bones for hours now spirals outward, escaping into the chilled air. You shiver, but you also smile. This is the real ritual, the moment you meet yourself again. Quirky tidbit. In some Persian communities, the final rinse had rules. You had to be silent. You had to stand facing the east. You had to name the person you wished well under your breath as you poured. One name. Only one. A prayer folded into a splash. You choose a name. Whisper it. Pour again. The water gathers at your feet and spirals into a drain so small it seems symbolic. You stand the copper bowl warm in your hands now, not from fire, but from having carried your truth. Historians still argue whether this last rinse was practical or poetic, but the bathers never did. They knew warmth comforts, but cold clarifies. You set the bowl down, a little harder than you meant to. The sound rings out metal on marble, clean and final. You take one last glance around the chamber. There's nothing to see, and yet it feels full, like a theater emptied of actors but echoing with applause. Then you step out. The hallway beyond is warmer again. Not hot, not heavy. Just natural. The air of the world creeping back in. You walk slowly. Every sound is louder now, every drip, every brush of linen. You're no longer part of the hammam's breath. You're your own breath again. You pass a mirror in a shallow alcove. You stop. And you look. There you are. Not just clean, not just washed, but returned. To something truer than skin. To a body-carrying story softened by steam, clarified by cold, scented by memory. You smile at your reflection, and though you wouldn't swear to it, you could almost swear it smiles back. The hallway begins to slope upward now, gently pulling you toward light. Your feet leave damp prints behind you, quickly fading as the stones drink them in. You move without thinking. Towel wrapped around your middle hair, slightly matted from the rinse skin, tight with that telltale post-hammam clarity, glowing, empty, humming with everything you just let go. You step into the drying chamber where warmth returns, not the suffocating heat of the main rooms, but a mellow, golden embrace like standing too close to sun-warmed stone. The scent here is different too. Not rosewater, not fig bark. Something simpler. Salt. Linen. Cedar. Lining the walls are stacks of folded cloths, baskets filled with clean robes, combs and jars of oil sealed with wax. You choose a towel soft, thick, and slightly scratchy like honesty. You pat yourself dry slowly as if savoring the final few moments when you still belong to the bathhouse and not yet the outside world. In a corner, a woman rubs warm oil into her calves with long, practiced strokes. Beside her, a young boy wraps his wet hair in a turban that's far too big, adjusting it like a crown. His mother chuckles and lets him wear it that way. She's not in a hurry. No one is here. A mirror nearby reflects you in profile. Your shoulders slope differently. You carry yourself like someone who has nothing left to hide and nothing left to prove. A middle-aged man walks by and nods towards you, speaking quietly. You'll leave here clean, but you'll leave here seen too. You nod back. Mainstream scholars often treat this final stage as utilitarian, just drying off redressing. But for many it was the re-entry, the transition between the inside and the outside, a sacred pause. Because once you leave the hammam, you return to a world of shoes, titles, negotiations, and sharp corners. But this moment, the drying, the dressing, the gathering of your thoughts is the doorway. Quirky tidbit. In some bathhouses, there was a tradition of sitting completely still for exactly 7 breaths before putting your outer robe back on. Not for religious reasons. Just to hold on to silence a little longer. a superstition born of softness. You sit now on one of the cedar benches, towel folded neatly in your lap, and breathe. 7 breaths, each slower than the last. You begin to hear more. Footsteps, fabric against skin, a distant splash, the scrape of a sandal being tied, the hush of someone preparing to speak but deciding against it. There's a robe waiting for you, light blue lined with linen, with a faint embroidery at the collar, a single wave. Or a curl of steam, you can't quite tell. You put it on. It fits better than you expect. In the far corner of the room, 2 men sit on the floor sharing dried fruit from a brass plate. They're not speaking, just chewing, slowly sipping water, passing the plate back and forth like it's a ceremony. You're offered a fig as you pass. You take it. Sweet. Cold. Perfect. Historians still argue whether these post-bath rituals were necessary or just indulgent customs layered on top of older religious routines. But the bathers? They didn't argue. They knew that the leaving mattered as much as the washing. You press a bit of oil into your palms, basil and almond, and run your hands through your hair. The scent is faint clean, nothing that would demand attention, but it lingers. You see a woman tying her sandals, her foot tapping slightly in rhythm with a tune only she can hear. She's not rushing, she's remembering. Maybe what was scrubbed away, maybe what was whispered, maybe what she's taking with her. You stand again. By the door, a brass bell hangs from a leather strap. You reach for it. You pause. You don't ring it, but you touch it. Let your fingers curl around the metal and then release. You step forward, 1 foot into the threshold, and feel behind you the whole bathhouse breathing once more, steam rising, whispers falling, laughter circling stories, spinning gently like wet towels left in the sun. The hammam does not follow you. It lets you go. Clean, seen, different. You step beyond the drying chamber into the anteroom, that quiet liminal space that doesn't quite belong to the hammam anymore, but not yet to the outside world either. The walls are plaster, warm-colored, peeling slightly in one corner like a secret that no one's gotten around to fixing. Light floods through a lattice window patterned and golden, striping your robe with shadows like soft prison bars that don't hold you. Your sandals rest nearby, just where you left them. You don't reach for them yet. Instead, you sit on a low wooden bench, curved smooth from 1,000 seated stories. Others sit beside you in that gentle shared silence that only comes when everyone has nothing urgent to say and no reason to leave quickly. One man draped in a dark brown robe hums quietly to himself, rolling a prayer bead slowly between calloused fingers. Next to him, an older woman braids her granddaughter's damp hair with a care that looks like muscle memory. The child hums too. Different tune. Same comfort. You rest your hands in your lap and let your breath settle into the rhythm of the room. This is the echo chamber of the hammam. Not in sound, but in energy. Everything you've done, the stories you've overheard, the warmth that has softened your shoulders, the water that's carved, lines of clean truth across your skin. It all reverberates here just a few beats behind your pulse. Mainstream historians often overlook this final room. It lacks drama spectacle function, but the hammam keepers understood a body can be clean, a mind calmed, but if a soul is rushed back into the world, it crumples like damp parchment. So, here you wait, and wait well. Someone coughs. Not out of illness, but the way a person coughs when they're about to say something and then changes their mind. A young man beside you finally leans forward and asks the air, "Do you ever feel like you left something behind, but you can't remember what it was?" No one answers. No one needs to, because everyone here has. a quirky practice once common in certain city hammams. People would leave small object stones, feathers, bits of string, herbs on purpose. Tiny rituals of release. Not to return to, but to let go of. If the object was gone when they next visited, it meant the bathhouse had accepted the offering. You reach into your robe pocket and find the comb given to you earlier by the attar seller. You run it once slowly through your hair. The teeth catch just a little, then smooth, and then you slide the comb under the bench. Leave it there, quietly. No ceremony, just trust. Across the room, someone begins to speak in a low, practiced tone, a poem recited more for himself than anyone else. The words are half lost in the light. I wash the grief behind my ears, and still it follows like perfume. But now it sweetens. You close your eyes. Let that sit. Let that settle. Historians still argue whether hammams were more therapeutic or performative spaces of genuine transformation, or elaborate rituals of pretend. But they miss the point. The bathhouse isn't a place, it's a process. You right now are part of it. You open your eyes, the sun has shifted. A young servant passes through the anteroom with a brass tray on it, tiny glasses of cardamom tea steam curling gently upward. He offers you one. You take it. Cradle it. Sip. The taste is bittersweet. Familiar. Final. It marks something, maybe the return. Maybe the release. You finish slowly savoring it like you've earned every note. And when you rise, your limbs feel both looser and heavier, like a story well told. You slip on your sandals. They're warmer than expected. The doorway ahead opens into daylight, but just before stepping through it, you turn. Just slightly, as if to offer one final glance not at the walls or the tiles or even the ceiling, but at the version of you that walked in hours ago, and the version walking out now. You nod to both. Not farewell. Just acknowledgement. Because some part of you will always remain here. Tucked in steam, pressed between tiles. Floating in the scent of rose smoke and secrets. You step forward. And the world waits. Outside, the air greets you like an old friend who has seen you cry and still wants to hold your hand. It's early evening now. The sun has mellowed into amber, casting the dusty streets in honey and shadow. You step out of the hammam and onto smooth stone worn by centuries of other bare feet. The transition is immediate from womb to world, from misted intimacy to the sharp angles of open air. Your robe rustles as a breeze brushes past, carrying the scent of bread baking nearby, mingled with the faint musk of animals and distant citrus trees. A few paces away, someone hawks dates from a cart. Their voice rises rhythmic, confident. A child darts past laughing barefoot, chasing a hoop. You pause under the low arch of the hammam's outer gate, not to hesitate, but to feel the difference. Inside you were heat and hush and whispered selves. Here you are once again, name and posture and destination. But the boundary is still soft. You linger near the fountain that bubbles just beyond the entrance. Small, ornate, more decorative than useful. But many bathers pause here after their visit to smooth their hair, to splash a bit of cool water on their face, or to gaze at their reflection just once more. You do the same. The water reflects you, rippling slightly with the breeze. You barely recognize the face. Not because it's changed, but because it's no longer hiding. Behind you, someone exits the hammam, laughing a sound brighter than any you've heard in days. The voice belongs to a man with a towel slung over his shoulder, and sandals tapping the stones with musical confidence. He doesn't see you, but you watch him vanish into the crowd, his hair still damp, his smile still real. You wonder how long that glow will last. Hours a day, a lifetime. Mainstream historians rarely explore what happens after the bath. They speak of rituals, architecture, scripts, but not about what it feels like to carry that cleanness into a world built for dust. You pull your robe tighter, not for warmth, but for comfort, and then without thinking you reach into your pocket. The vial of attar is still there. You open it, a single drop on your wrist, nothing more. The scent unfurls, slowly saffron smoke. Citrus leaf. It wraps around you like memory, but lighter now. Less binding, more blessing. Quirky tidbit in Shiraz. It was once believed that if you left the hammam wearing a scent, you didn't walk in with your next conversation would shape your next 7 days. No one could ever agree if this was a curse or a promise. You smile at that. Across the square, 2 women sit at a corner tea stall. One of them gestures animatedly, describing something with her whole body. The other listens with her hands wrapped around a steaming glass, nodding as though the world hinges on each word. You watch them for a moment, not intruding, just present. Behind you, the hammam looms still, though not imposing. Its dome now glows in the sun's farewell tiles, glinting like scales in a sleeping dragon. You think of all it holds inside heat, hope, secrets, the scent of fig bark and sorrow? The fox in the mural, the lion left by the fountain, it feels alive. You whisper almost to yourself, you softened me. And the breeze in return seems to murmur back. That's all I ever wanted. You begin to walk, not away, just onward. You carry no burden, no story, not right now. Just your robe, your breath, and the smallest ghost of warmth between your shoulder blades. Each step is light. Each corner holds new sound. The world feels louder but not unwelcome. And somewhere in the fabric of the city, you know someone else just stepped from another hammam, blinking into golden dusk, wondering if the change they feel will last. It will. Not in the way they expect, not in the way you expected, but it will. Because the bathhouse doesn't change you. It reminds you of how light you can be, of how much you carried, and how deeply your silence deserved to be heard. You walk slowly now, not because you're tired, but because the world feels new, as though someone scrubbed the sky while you were inside. The streets wind gently, lined with clay walls, tinged apricot by the sun's low light. The chatter of the bazaar hums softly behind you, but for a few blessed blocks you are still wrapped in the cocoon of the hammam's hush. You pass by a vendor rolling up bolts of fabric, muttering to himself about dust and customers who touch everything but buy nothing. His voice is half grumble, half song. You smile. Even irritation sounds melodic after hours in the bathhouse. And then you see her. An older woman seated beside a fountain niche, selling scents, not oils or perfumes, but tiny pouches tied with silk string filled with dried herbs and petals. She watches you with eyes like dark honey, and when you meet her gaze, she lifts a single pouch from her lap. Yours, she says, as if you'd already paid for it. You approach, eyebrows raised. How do you know? She smiles. You smell like memory. You take the pouch. Inside dried orange peel, crushed rose, one small clove. A scent for holding on to softness. You tuck it into your robe pocket beside the now empty vial of attar. The pouch is warm. Perhaps it always was. Mainstream historians rarely record such moments, chance meetings, scented pouches, strangers who know you without speaking. But in the oral traditions surrounding hammams, these were everything. Stories passed from bathers to children to poets. I was gifted a fig and forgave my sister. I received mint and met my future wife. I was handed saffron and finally told the truth. You continue walking. Ahead lies a small archway, a street tunnel that opens onto a courtyard. As you pass beneath it, you hear laughter. Familiar. You glance to your right, and there they are, the women from the hammam. Now redressed, vibrant, animated. Their hair still damp in parts, robes fresh and cinched with colorful sashes. They sip tea from glass tumblers and gesture in broad arcs as if their stories are too wide for words alone. One sees you, smiles, raises her glass as if in toast. You return the smile. You don't know her name, but you know her laugh. You know the way she knelt by the scented basin. You know the song she hummed as she dabbed henna onto her palm, and she knows something of you too. This is the quiet truth of the hammam. You leave it as a stranger to no one. Quirky tidbit. In Shiraz and Yas, it was once common for hammam visitors to form informal steam circles. Small communities of regular bathers who saw one another weekly. They swapped stories, remedies, rumors. Sometimes entire weddings were arranged through hammam connections. Other times debts forgiven. Affairs forgiven. Names remembered. You sit at the edge of a low wall beside the courtyard. A man nearby begins tuning a cedar its notes, wandering like birds not quite ready to fly. He plucks a simple tune. Minor. Slow. Comforting. You close your eyes. And in the darkness behind your lids, the hammam unfurls again. Tile by tile. The mosaic fox. The scent of clove oil. The whisper of someone telling the truth beneath a dome. The furnace boy's grin. The scribe's delicate fingers. The lion left by the fountain. All of it follows, but not heavily. It lingers the way a tar lingers warming where it rests, never demanding more than attention. You open your eyes again. The women have left. The scent cellar is gone. But the pouch in your pocket is still there, and with it the weightless presence of a day that cleaned more than skin. You stand. The sky is deepening now, plum-colored, streaked with violet cloud. In the distance, the first calls of evening prayer rise like doves startled into flight. You listen, not because of obligation, but because the voice echoes with the same tone you remember from the bathhouse. Not instruction, not command, just invitation. You place one hand on your chest where the warmth still sits just below the bone. And with quiet certainty, you whisper not to anyone in particular, I carried so much in with me, and I carry less now. And the breeze replies, that was always the point. You drift farther through the streets, now half aimless, letting the curves of the alleys and the rustling life of the city guide your path. A cat darts across your toes, gray and sleek, its tail held high, as if it owns this part of the quarter. Maybe it does. Everything here seems to move with a kind of quiet confidence. You wonder if the bathhouse gifted that to more than just people. A fruit vendor calls out to no one in particular, offering quince and almonds. From a cart that smells like the last hour before autumn. His voice is gentle, not pushy, as if he's inviting people to remember sweetness rather than demanding they buy it. You pass a mosaic set into the wall, a small scene barely larger than a hand. It depicts a figure pouring water over another's bowed head. The colors are faded, the edges chipped, but the tenderness in the image remains. You stop. Run your fingers lightly over the tiny blue tile. The scene is not labeled "not explained," but you know what it is. A ritual. A reminder. A moment like yours. Mainstream historians argue endlessly about the evolution of hammams. Were they purely utilitarian? A social control mechanism? a cultural flourish grafted from Roman designs. But the mosaic says none of that. It simply whispers. This mattered. You continue walking, letting dusk descend around you like a robe. And then you see a quiet doorway recessed behind a fig tree, its wooden lintel carved with looping vines. Above it, a simple plaque, Sarai Ikarita House of Maps. You step inside. It's dim. Cool. Scented faintly of parchment and camphor. The shopkeeper, an elderly man with eyebrows that could declare independence, looks up and nods once. Just look, he says, waving a hand toward the shelves. You do. Maps line every wall. Some of cities you know, others of kingdoms that no longer exist. One shows a star chart etched into silk. Another is drawn on cured leather curling at the corners. The ink bled into veins like ancient tattoos. And there in the corner is something stranger. A map of the hammam. Not just the layout, but the experience. It's painted loosely, each room represented not by architecture, but by metaphor. The steam room is drawn as a jungle. The cold rinse as a frozen river. The confession dome, a void filled with stars. And the drying room, a sunburst stitched with fine gold threads. You ask who made this? The shopkeeper shrugs. Someone who went in heavy. And came out light. Quirky tidbit. There are whispers of cartographers who mapped not lands but journeys of transformation. Emotions, rituals, moments. Their maps were kept secret, shared only with those who had walked the same path. In Isfahan, one such map was supposedly burned because it made readers weep uncontrollably. You buy the map. The shopkeeper wraps it carefully in oiled paper and ties it with string. As he hands it over, he says, "It won't show you how to get anywhere, but it will remind you where you've been." You thank him and step back into the cooling evening. The streets are quieter now. Lamps flicker to life, orange amber soft as memories. You unfold the map once in the glow of a doorway. And as you study its strange symbolic topography, you realize the bathhouse didn't just cleanse you. It rewrote your landscape. And now you are the map. A city of secret rooms and steaming truths. A dome echoing with things half said. A lion left on a fountain's edge. A bowl poured cold, sharp, and honest. A pouch of scent tied shut like a vow. And with every step you take, you carry it forward, not in burden, but in blessing. Not all journeys begin with departure. Some begin the moment you walk back into your own life and find yourself new. The night curls in like a cat at your feet, slow stretching and full of little sounds you'd missed before the clink of tea glasses on saucers, the metallic chirp of a gate being drawn. Shut the sigh of breeze ruffling a linen curtain in someone's upstairs window. You wander now through the quieter quarter, where hammam goers go to settle not just physically but emotionally. Your robe has dried completely, clinging softly to your skin, like memory woven in cotton. And still the faintest trace of a tar hovers in your wake, like a ghost that doesn't want to leave. You find yourself in a courtyard you've never seen before, though it feels oddly familiar. Dusty brick underfoot, a single almond tree reaching sideways over a low stone bench. A woman sits there sketching with charcoal on rough paper. She doesn't look up. Just says, "You smell like fig bark and clarity." You chuckle. "I suppose I do. Sit if you like," she murmurs. "I draw people who've just left the hammam, before they forget what they felt." You hesitate, then sit. She doesn't ask your name. Doesn't need to. Her charcoal begins to scratch softly, rhythmically. Mainstream historians don't record this kind of thing. They write about plumbing innovations, religious permissions, architectural flourishes, but rarely about what the hammam gave back that wasn't measurable. Because what's the proper footnote for a stranger captured my softness before I lost it again? You sit still, breathing evenly, listening to the scratch of charcoal and the soft tap of falling almonds onto the brick path. A cat appears again, different one this time, white with a single black ear, and curls up at your feet without asking permission. You ask, do you show the portraits to anyone? She nods once, only the subjects. Then I burn them. The image stays. The form goes. You close your eyes. Let her draw. Let her see you as you are not postured or armored, but bare and clean and full of some tenderness you don't entirely recognize. A light wind kicks up. The almonds rattle in their branches. The cat flicks its tail. You remember something. The lion, the comb, the mosaic fox, the basin of birth, the cold rinse and the name whispered into it. All of it lives inside you now, folded in layers like steam into towels. The woman says, "Done." You open your eyes. She turns the drawing to face you, and there you are, not exact, not photographic, but true. Your posture softened, eyes open but inward looking, a face without defenses. "It's beautiful," you say quietly. She shrugs. You were. That helped. You smile. She rolls the paper gently and hands it to you. No charge, she adds, but you should hang it where light touches it first thing in the morning. You nod. That feels right. Quirky tidbit. In some cities, it was believed that if you were sketched within 1 hour of leaving the hammam, the portrait would preserve your clearest self and keep envy away. These portraits were rarely displayed, often hidden behind curtains or sewn into the backs of traveling cloaks. You rise gently, the paper tucked beneath your arm. The cat stands, stretches like spilled ink, and vanishes into the alley. You thank the woman. She's already begun sketching someone else, perhaps imagined, perhaps yet to arrive. She doesn't look back. You step away. The streets begin to widen now, opening toward the main road. The moon climbs the sky, pale as milk, dragging with it a trail of silvered clouds. You don't rush. Every corner, every breath feels like part of a long exhale you've been holding in since before this day began. Historians still argue about the legacy of the hammam, how it fits into Islamic law, whether it reinforced social hierarchies, what role it played in urban planning. But here's a legacy no one writes down. You felt yourself, fully, briefly, and truthfully. And in a world built on performance, that is no small revolution. You glance at the rolled paper in your hand. It's not just a sketch, it's a timestamp. Proof that for one evening in your life you were seen. And you saw yourself, and neither flinched. The road ahead opens wider, spilling into a plaza dappled in moonlight and the golden wash of hanging lanterns. Musicians gather here, sometimes just loosely enough to not be a band, but tightly enough to summon a mood. Tonight it's a trio, a man with a knee flute, a woman with a daff drum, and another humming a tune without words, as though the night itself needed a lullaby. You slow your steps, stand for a moment. Let the sound wrap around you like a final towel still damp with warmth. You are not alone. Others have gathered too, an old merchant with a threadbare scarf, a child in oversized slippers, two lovers standing so close their shadows fuse. No one speaks, no one claps. The music isn't for celebration, it's for continuation. You find a spot near the edge of a stone bench and sit carefully, cradling the rolled portrait in your lap. You haven't looked at it again yet, and you don't need to. It's doing its job simply by being there. Across the plaza, a boy lights a taper from one of the lanterns and gently nudges it into a small clay lamp on the ground. One by one, more lamps follow, tiny flames dancing in bowls the size of your palm. The light flickers across the bricks in patterns that feel both ancient and unplanned. And just like that, the plaza becomes its own kind of hammam, a place held gently between silence and sound, between night and not yet sleep. Quirky tidbit. In medieval Persian cities, plazas outside bathhouses were often used as spillover sanctuaries. People stayed there after bathing to avoid re-entering the world too fast. Philosophers debated whether lingering outside the hammam delayed the rehardening of the self. No one agreed. Everyone lingered. The ney player holds a note long and low, and your body responds before your mind does. Your shoulders drop, your spine uncoils, your breath deepens. You glance at the faces around you. None are familiar, and yet everyone feels known. Maybe they've all come from different hammams, or maybe from the same 1 hours apart. Maybe they haven't bathed today at all. But here in this post-steam stillness, it doesn't matter, because this too is part of the journey. The holding of softness, the suspension of return, the delay of forgetting. You reach into your robe and find the pouch of scent again. Open it slightly. Inhale. Orange peel. Clove. Rose. Time folds briefly and you're back beneath the dome water rushing over your shoulders, a stranger, whispering a confession 2 breaths to your left. You close the pouch. Press it against your heart. Hold it there. Mainstream scholars often wonder why hammams retained their emotional importance even after plumbing improved, and private baths became more common. The answer doesn't fit into architecture or health codes. It fits here, in this moment, where the body has returned to stillness but the soul still ripples from heat. The music slows. The humming softens. The plaza breathes together once and lets go. The musicians nod to one another, and without ceremony they begin to pack their instruments. No applause. Just knowing looks. Just the quiet gratitude of people not ready for bed, but no longer awake. You rise. The portrait still tucked in your hand, the scent clinging gently to your chest. The hammam's silence folded like a letter inside your mind. You begin walking again, though you don't rush. The stars have bloomed now, scattered across the sky like jasmine seeds thrown into the dark. And the road ahead has changed not in shape, but in meaning. Before it was just a street. Now it's a continuation. Of steam. Of softness. Of story. The stars above wink like they know something you don't. Or maybe they simply recognize you now, as if the layers you shed in the hammam have made you more legible to the sky. You follow the curve of the road until it dips quietly into a quieter neighborhood. The lanterns are fewer here, casting long shadows between their pools of amber light. The city has begun to close its eyes, and still you walk. Not to arrive anywhere, just to continue being in the after. The bathhouse may be behind you, but it has rewritten your pacing. Your breath now follows its own rhythm. You aren't thinking about dinner or work or tomorrow's obligations. You're thinking about nothing. And in that nothing is a fullness that feels both ancient and earned. A dog trots past you, pauses, sniffs the air around your robe, and then moves on satisfied. You smile. You reach a small bridge that crosses a narrow canal. Water beneath it glimmers silver, disturbed only by the occasional flick of a fish's tail or the drifting petal from a jacaranda tree. You pause in the middle, lean on the cool stone rail, and look down. The moon reflects back at you, broken by ripples. And beside it, your face. Not pristine, not idealized. Just present. Just real. Mainstream historians rarely speak of bathhouses as mirrors, but maybe they should. Not glass ones, emotional ones. In the hammam, you didn't see your reflection. You felt it from the way you walked, the way you listened, the way you were allowed to be vulnerable without vanishing. And here now on this bridge, that reflection solidifies. You are more yourself than you were this morning. Quirky tidbit. In Shiraz, there was once a superstition that if you saw your reflection in water after a hammam visit, you had to whisper a secret to it, or risk the bath's gifts fading by sunrise. Not all secrets were deep. Some were just gentle truths. You lean closer to the canal and whisper softly, "I'm not sure I want to go back to who I was." The water says nothing, but it carries your words downstream. You stand there for several minutes, letting the silence stitch itself around your ankles until a breeze urges you forward again. The road narrows. The homes here are smaller, their doors painted in faded reds and blues. Some have potted mint lining their steps. Others boast old wooden knockers shaped like hands or lions or crescent moons. You pass each one like pages in a quiet book, and then you see a lamp still burning. One window square and low spills warm light onto the stones. A shadow moves behind it, a figure in a robe perhaps folding linen or writing at a low table. You can't see clearly, but you pause. Because something about the glow feels familiar, feels earned. And you imagine briefly that inside someone else is writing about you, a character who walked into the steam full of tangled breath and emerged with shoulders you could finally relax into. You imagine they've just written. They lingered on the bridge and whispered to the moon. They carried the lion's patience and the fox's clever quiet. They left nothing behind but silence and took only what was already theirs. You smile. Historians still argue whether hammams shaped cities or were shaped by them, whether the architecture molded culture or culture shaped the need for warmth and ritual. But those who've walked this road tonight, they aren't arguing, they're remembering. You reach a familiar door yours, it looks the same, but it feels different now. Like something that might open into a story instead of just a room. You hesitate, not because you're unsure, but because you want this moment to last just one breath longer. So you take that breath, feel your chest rise, and know this softness you carry, it doesn't end here. It enters with you. It sleeps beside you. It steams in your thoughts long after the towel is hung and the oil has faded. You touch the door's worn wood, and gently, almost reverently, you push it open. The door closes softly behind you, not with a creak or a thud, but a hush, as if even the house knows you've returned differently. Inside your home feels unfamiliar in the most welcome way. The walls seem to breathe with you. The lantern's flicker reflects in the bowl of water by your bedside, casting a shimmer across the plaster like waves you'd forgotten lived here. You shrug off your robe and fold it gently over the chair, no longer a garment, but a relic. It smells faintly of oil and citrus and the softness of other people's laughter. You let your hand linger on the fabric for a second longer than usual. Then you light a smaller lamp, its glow flickering up to touch the old tapestry on the wall, the one you've passed 1,000 times without seeing. Tonight you see it. Its patterns dance waves birds, something like smoke or breath rising. You trace one of the curves with your eyes, and it leads you into a memory that's not yours, but now somehow feels like it belongs. Mainstream historians often describe hammams as acts of civic hygiene, but they rarely acknowledge their aftershocks the way the ritual doesn't end when the towel is folded or the dome left behind. You're still in it, even now, even here. You move slowly, deliberately, like someone who's learned how to be present again. You open the window, let in the breeze, The scent of the city softened by night floats in bread crusts cooling in ovens. Sweet mint crushed under someone's heel, the faintest puff of smoke from a cooking fire that refused to die early. You return to the basin. Wash your hands again. Not out of necessity, out of reverence. The water is cooler now, but it's still a kind of echo. You glance at your reflection in it. There you are again. Not tired, not perfect. Just open. You retrieve the portrait and unroll it gently. Place it on the wall beside your bed. It stares back, not imposing, not confrontational, but steadfast. A record of a version of you that walked through steam and scrub and silence, and came out not reborn but remembered. Quirky tidbit. In some regions, bathers would leave a small object near their bed. The night after their hammam visit, soapstone a dried leaf or a bit of silk. The belief was that the softness of the bath would soak into the dreams and keep the harshness of the world at bay for just one more night. You find a small river stone on your shelf, smooth, round, cool. You set it beside your pillow. Sit on the bed. The mattress gives slightly under your weight the familiar creak of wood and cotton, greeting you like a lullaby. You lie back. The ceiling is quiet. You breathe. And you realize that the silence you now hold isn't absence, it's harvest. You gathered it piece by piece from the hush of the marble dome, the song of the stranger rinsing her feet, the laughter near the spice bowl, the pause before the cold pour, the warmth pressed between your shoulder blades by someone who never asked your name. Historians still argue whether this softness is cultural, religious, or purely psychological. Whether it lasted days or hours, whether it was real or ritual. But you're not debating, you're resting. You turn onto your side, fold your hands beneath your cheek, and feel the scent pouch press gently beneath your palm. And it is enough. It is enough to close your eyes and carry the bathhouse with you not as a building, but as a hush, a warmth, a memory that breathes. Your eyes drift open again, just slightly. The room is quieter now, the kind of quiet that feels earned rather than empty. Outside, the moon has shifted its position, casting its silver spill across your window ledge, like an invitation or a benediction. Somewhere in the distance, a door creaks. A dog coughs once. The wind brushes gently against the shutters and retreats as though confirming you're still here. You are. You haven't fully slipped into sleep yet. Not quite, but the space between thought and dream has softened. You rise slowly, drawn by something gentle and unspoken. You pad barefoot to the corner of the room where your shelf holds small things that matter: a broken tea bowl, a dried fig from your aunt's garden, a bit of blue thread you once tied around your wrist during a storm. Tonight you add the scent pouch to the collection. Not tucked away, placed at the front, as if to say, this softness leads now. Mainstream historians rarely catalog private altars, but nearly every home once had one, whether by name or instinct. A place where the body could meet memory. A shrine not to gods but to gentleness. You sit beside yours, and for a long, slow moment you do nothing but be with it. The stone from your bedside is still cool in your hand. You turn it over and over, letting its smoothness ground you. The attar is fading from your skin, but the echo lingers in your breath. You don't need to add anything more to the altar tonight. Everything necessary is already here. A quiet voice inside you whispers, "This is who I am when nothing is demanded of me." You nod, and it feels like someone nods back. Perhaps the lion, or the woman who drew your softness, or the stranger who left you a smile and a story in the dome. Or perhaps it's just you. Quirky tidbit. There's a forgotten tradition in certain Persian households where after the bathhouse a person would sit in silence for exactly 7 minutes with a candle and one personal object. No speaking, no movement, just reflection. They believed it sealed the softness into the bones before the harshness of the next day could steal it. You return to bed, snuff the lamp, and for 7 breaths you do nothing but listen to the creak of wood, to the tick of your own pulse, to the hush that still trails behind your earlobes from the dome. Historians still argue whether the hammam was a spiritual place or a social one, but you know the answer is yes. And it was a cleansing of the skin, and of things the skin can't hold. It was ritual and rebellion. It was a place to shed shame secrets and sandals, and you, dear listener, carried it all the way home. Now tucked beneath the blanket head, sinking into the pillow like steam rising through stone, you let your body finally rest. Not because the day is over, but because you are ready. And readiness, you now understand, doesn't come from preparation. It comes from softness. The softness you stepped into. The softness you stepped out with. And the softness you will carry forward. You breathe in. The scent is gone, but the hush remains. You close your eyes, and sleep walks in barefoot, kind, and quiet. Sleep doesn't take you all at once. It's courteous, like that easing in beside you like a friend who knows better than to knock too loudly. The ceiling above your bed is shadowed. Now the shapes of its plaster curves soft in the darkness. You trace them with your eyes one last time, like a traveler memorizing the road home before closing the map. Your body has settled. But your mind still drifts a little. It floats back not just to the hammam itself, but to the way you moved through it. The feel of steam unfurling across your chest. The grain of tile beneath your palms. The particular pressure of water when someone else poured it over you. Not roughly, not delicately, but with care. There's something profound about that, isn't there? Being cared for without expectation. No transaction, no performance, just heat, and hands, and the silent permission to be undone and still safe. You think of the boy who tended the furnace, barefoot, soot-streaked, humming, as if the fire was his choir. You think of the mural fox, its mosaic eye glinting with a secret only it could keep. You think of the lion sculpture, wet and watchful, left behind in a room filled with echoes. Each of them now lodged inside you, not as decoration, but as anchors. Mainstream historians love to describe how bathhouses affected trade routes, health systems, social order. But the personal echoes the little things those live in stories. In the barely remembered details, people pass on when no one's asking for history. Quirky tidbit. In some villages, people believed that dreams had more power after a bathhouse visit. They called it sleeping in the steam's shadow. Dreams from that night were said to hold insight or healing or memory from before you were born. You lie still and wonder what dream might arrive for you. Maybe it will be a return to the dome steam, rolling in like fog over a field. Maybe it'll take you back to the basin with its carved rim and its cold, bracing honesty. Or maybe it will be something newer, something soft, unfamiliar, and needed. You're open now. Sleep finds the curve of your back, presses lightly against your ribs as if testing to see if you're ready. You are. The room is silent, but not hollow. It hums quietly with all that has been left unsaid, all that has been poured out and gently gathered up again. The portrait on the wall seems to glow faintly in the moonlight. It holds your likeness not as others see you, but as you felt yourself to be. That softness, that vulnerability, that raw, rinsed humanness. You look at it one last time through half-closed lids, and you say not out loud but from the deepest part of you, "Don't let me forget this." The moon holds steady. The shadows do not answer, but neither do they move away. They keep vigil as if the softness you earned tonight deserves more than just sleep. It deserves memory. It deserves sanctuary. It deserves a tomorrow that begins with the same hush that ended tonight. And somewhere inside that hush, a promise remains. The bathhouse is gone, but the steam still lingers. In you. Always. You dream. But not like before, not in wild surges or fractured scenes. This dream is slow, like honey poured in moonlight. You're walking again barefoot on warm tiles, each step echoing with a memory you didn't know you still held. Your hands trail along smooth stone walls that pulse faintly beneath your fingertips, alive somehow. Or maybe just listening. In the dream, the bathhouse isn't just a place. It's a world. The dome above you opens like a breath held too long and finally released. Stars spill through it, not pinpoints of light, but soft rivers that run down the walls like falling silk. There is no roof now, only sky. You move without effort. Each room you pass through replays part of your evening, but different now. Quieter. Amplified by stillness. The hot chamber glows from within, not from fire, but from memory. You see shadows of women laughing, rinsing, braiding each other's hair, brushing oil across backs with the devotion of painters. No one speaks in the dream, but you understand everything. You step into the rinsing room. The basin is there again, full to the brim, with water so clear it reflects not just your face but your story. You see yourself at age 10 covered in mud, at 15 heartbroken, at 20 confused but defiant, and now just as you are, washed, weary, whole. You reach into the basin and pull nothing out, but still your hands feel full. Mainstream historians might say dreams are irrelevant, ephemeral, but they never spent time in hammams where the air blurred the line between waking and something more profound, where steam made the invisible visible, where the heart could speak without shame. You enter the cool room last. It is empty, but not lonely. There in the center sits the lion, still soaked, still patient. He turns his stone face towards you and winks. You laugh. In the dream, it sounds like wind chimes. You sit beside him, lean your head against his shoulder, and feel the last of your tension drain, not forcefully, not suddenly, but like sand slipping through fingers in slow motion. Quirky tidbit. In some Persian folklore, lions represented inner clarity. To dream of a lion in water was said to signify that your soul had remembered its shape. You ask the lion quietly, "Will I carry this feeling back with me?" And though he does not speak, you understand the answer. You already are. You wake, but not all at once. The weight of your body returns first, limbs soft and heavy against the bed. Then the scent faint clove rose memory. Then sound somewhere a bird beginning its morning call, hesitant and half asleep like you. You don't open your eyes yet. There's no rush. Because the dream didn't leave you, it simply changed rooms. The softness is still here. You feel it in the way your fingers curl around the blanket, in the breath that rises smooth and warm from your chest, in the quiet promise echoing behind your ribs. Today too can begin gently. Historians still argue whether ritual has a place in modern life, whether softness makes us weak, whether stillness is a luxury or a rebellion. But you know now. Softness is not the opposite of strength. It's where strength goes to remember itself. You rise with the light not abruptly, but like a tide pulled forward by gravity and grace. Morning settles through the window in long, pale bands touching the floor before it reaches you. The city outside begins to stretch, unaware of the dream you just left behind, or the weightlessness you now wear like a new layer of skin. You sit up slowly. The scent pouch is still by your pillow. The portrait still gazes gently from the wall. The stone from the nightstand is now warm in your palm. Everything is right where it should be, but you are no longer where you were. You wrap yourself in a robe, not the one from last night, but a fresh one. Light, soft, unassuming. You glide through the quiet of your space like someone who's finally made peace with their own footsteps. You pour yourself water from a ceramic jug. Drink. Let it anchor you. There's a new steadiness at your limbs. Not energy, not urgency. Just a kind of practiced ease, as though the softness from the hammam has trained you in a different way of moving through the world. You glance once more at the shelf where your objects rest. The scent pouch, the blue thread, the river stone, a single sprig of mint. Altars don't need incense or chants. Sometimes they're just collections of reminders that you let go, that you were open, that you let warmth in without flinching. Mainstream historians never write down these endings. The bathhouse fades from the record once the steam disperses. But you know that the true ending comes now as you face the day, not with armor, but with awareness. Quirky tidbit. In some hammam traditions, bathers would write a single sentence in charcoal on the edge of their doorway the morning after. Not for others to read, just to remind themselves. Most were washed away by the week's dust. Some lingered for years. You find a piece of charcoal in the drawer, and on the wall beside your door you write one sentence. Today I will remember the hush. That's all. No explanations. No qualifiers. Just a vow. You open the door. The city breathes. You breathe with it. And you step out not restored, not transformed, but simply yourself in a way that feels freshly possible. The world will ask things of you today. That's its job. But now you know you carry something it can't take. The steam, the silence, the softness that soaked into your bones when no one was watching. This is your quiet inheritance. This is your unspoken armor. This is your lion. Let the imagery soften now, like a candle flickering at the edge of a breeze. The lion fades from your memory, not vanishing, but nestling into a corner of your heart where quiet things go to be kept safe. The scent of rose and clove grows distant but comforting, like the faint perfume of a loved one's old scarf. Breathe in, slowly. Let your shoulders sink. Breathe out. Even slower. Let your jaw loosen. The bathhouse is behind you, but the warmth remains. You're back in your own bed, perhaps, or still resting in the folds of imagination. Either way, know this: you are allowed to keep the hush. It doesn't expire with the night. It follows you, a subtle thread of peace woven into your waking hours. Let the water still in your mind. Let the dome's echo fade into your breath. Let the softness you carried home become the silence you offer yourself now. No questions, no pressure, just rest. You did not need to be changed to be worthy of this quiet. You only needed to stop long enough to remember what was always there. So stay right here a little longer. Float between now and not quite yet. Let the hush carry you forward. And if the world knocks too loudly tomorrow, you already know where to return. To the heat. To the hush. To yourself. Good night, dear one. Sleep well. End of script. Sweet dreams.